hard, okay? All right, get the out of here.
I'm going to talk a lot about drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it!
On 93.5
Watch it!
and 107.5.
Boom, baby!
The Fan.
Now, Kevin, I am in no way, shape, or form, and I'm being serious here. I'm saying this out of irony, not out of flippancy. I'm literally not making light of or trying to be funny here. But you, Kevin Bowen, have said numerous times on this program that you don't believe in jinxes, right?
I do not. No, I do not believe in jinxes.
Like the month of May, you're like, oh, it looks great for the weather forecast, that kind of thing. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong in this, but if I'm not mistaken, in the last 2 days of this program, one being on Friday and then the other being yesterday, that being a Monday, you said, how long's it been since we've seen any of the Colts in the headlines for the wrong side of things? And then yesterday you were like, OTAs, the good news is there's not a lot to talk about other than just kind of evaluating where players are. And I say that not because you're right on both counts. I mean, I'm not mocking it, but it is incredibly like, whoa, that then all of a sudden on what was thought to be just kind of a routine Tuesday, we've got a pretty big storyline involving a Colt. Whether it's the entire franchise, it's going to affect the franchise. Whether it's more than one player, for right now, that doesn't appear to be the case. But a pretty big storyline that comes out yesterday involving Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah, Jake, something that I've said, probably dating back to David Perry flipping a golf cart in Arizona, whenever that was, 2016, 2017, something like that. The Colts seem to want to hang a banner for a lot of things that maybe aren't the most banner-worthy moments. I've always said, hang the banner for not showing up on the ESPN ticker. They're very rarely, if ever, on the bottom of that ESPN ticker. And usually when you're on it, that means something has happened off the field. And they were certainly on it yesterday afternoon with the report that was originally from sportshandle.com. I'm sitting there getting my haircut yesterday afternoon, and Darren Ravel fires off this tweet. And at the time, Jake, the player was not identified. And Eddie Garrison, who produces the Noon to 3 show right now, and even you and I had a conversation pretty early. And I don't know what this says about Isaiah Rodgers, but when Eddie goes, all right, 2 guesses on who the player was, Rodgers was one of the 2 guesses. It didn't stun me that he was the one. Obviously, it's not something that I knew about. I did find it a bit odd that in the 2 open OTA sessions each of the last 2 weeks, Rodgers has not participated in the 11-on-11 practices. So I think that's one of the questions I have. There's a lot of questions that I have. To your point, is it isolated? It appears that it is, but we obviously have to find that out because the Detroit Lions thing from a couple months ago wasn't isolated at all. When did the Colts know? I mean, they drafted 3 cornerbacks.
I think the Colts found out yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think that this is something they've known for a long, long time. But again, why didn't he participate in OTAs? They didn't sign a veteran corner, so that lends you to think that they maybe didn't know as much. And then obviously, if these reports are somewhat true, whether he bet on the Colts, whether he bet for or against the Colts, you release him once you confirm everything. He's got 1 year left on his contract. You release him. We'll see if the punishment is 6 games. We'll see if the punishment's a year. We'll see if it's longer. But you just flat out release him. And if you preach character and you're about that, Isaiah Rodgers has played his last game in a Colts uniform.
So yesterday, Kevin, and the only reason I share it in this form is because it turned out to be true, so thus I would assume that everything that was told to me was true. So let me tell you what I was told yesterday, because there's a key component to it. And by the way, good morning, everybody. It is a Tuesday. That's Kevin Bowen. I'm Jake Query. Mark Dykton here as well. It's Kevin and Query here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Zaire Franklin's going to join us on today's program of the Colts, and as well, Steph Wilson said, you know what, he's getting ready. He is finally heading home after his accident in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and wanted to be able to talk to fans. He'll do that at 9 o'clock. Yesterday at about 11:30, I got a text message from someone I know that said, hey, I found out yesterday that the latest NFL gambling investigation has a member of the Colts. Not sure if it's more than one. It should break in the next day or couple of days. But it seems as though a suspension is imminent. So I was like, How reliably did you hear it? Very reliably. The player has known since February but still participated in OTAs, but I believe the Colts are just finding out and they will have 3 days to release or respond. And then...
Boy, if you're the player and you've known since February and you've withheld that from the team, that's probably not a good thing.
So my understanding as well is that yesterday when initially asked about it, that the highest of the high executives of the Colts were like, wait a minute, we're learning this information as you are. We are unaware of this. And then what was interesting to me was, and I totally understand from a legal standpoint, typically the Colts' response is going to be, we are still gathering the evidence,
right,
whatever.
Right.
Well, then Isaiah Rodgers just comes out and says, yep.
Yeah, should we read that statement?
Yeah, so here's the statement from Isaiah Rodgers yesterday. He posted this on social media.
Yeah, late last night.
Addressing the current reports, I want to take full responsibility for my actions. I know I have made mistakes, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to repair the situation. The last thing I ever wanted to do was to be a distraction to the Colts organization, my coaches, and my teammates. I've let people down that I care about. I made an error in judgment, and I'm going to work hard to make sure that those mistakes are rectified through this process. It's an honor to play in It's an honor to play in the NFL, and I have never taken that lightly. I am very sorry for all of this. End quote.
Jake, I find myself... It's pretty hard for me to have much sympathy for him, to be totally honest with you. I think all of us either work or have worked in jobs where we don't agree with every single rule that the company has. And is it awkward? Is it murky? Is it confusing that the NFL is in bed with multiple gambling partnerships? Hell, the Super Bowl played in Arizona last year. The stadium is attached to a sports book. So all of it is weird and a bit murky and a bit awkward, but you know full well the rules that when you sign on the dotted line, what comes with that and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And the fact that if you believe the initial report that he had someone placing these bets for him, he clearly knew that that was wrong, what he was doing. I mean, if he didn't think he was doing anything wrong, he just would have placed the bets himself. And so to me, it's pretty simple. The laws are don't bet at the facility, don't bet on the NFL, and especially don't bet on your team. And these $25 to $50 bets, around 100 of them, is that worth giving up a $2.2 million contract here? And if we were going to list the top 5-7 players on the Colts roster that had the best opportunity to cement themselves in the NFL, to be a mainstay for this football team in the next 3 to 4 years, Rodgers would have been close to the top of the list, given the position he plays, given the point in his career, all of those things.
The two things here. I've been told that there may be more that comes out. And I don't mean other players. I mean more information regarding the situation with Isaiah Rodgers, beyond just he put $25 and $50 here and there on an app. I don't know that for certain. I've been told that there is belief that more will come out. Let's put it that way. I totally get what you're saying, Kevin, and I agree with you in regards to the NFL has kind of put themselves in a sticky situation. But then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, you know what? If you're a bartender and you're serving drinks to people all night long, you are also under the understanding that it is the assumption of your owners that you yourself are not consuming those drinks while you're working. And it's kind of the same thing. If you are an athlete, you are under the understanding that people are utilizing your work towards gambling entertainment, but it isn't understood that your boss is under the impression that you will not be partaking in that yourself. And I would assume, contractually speaking, it is very clear that you are to not be involved. It is no doubt a slippery slope. It is no doubt a disappointment for Isaiah Rodgers as a player, certainly. There's not much more you can say about it other than I do. The other thing, Kevin, that I've always felt, and I felt this about Pete Rose, which is then opening an entire different can of worms we don't need to get into. But
peak July 10th contest.
That's right. But I have always heard this, and this has always been my thought on it. And that is, yeah, but if he's betting on his team, then that's going to make him play even harder, and he's not compromising the game. But the thing that I've always said is, if an athlete bets on his team, then what does that tell people in the games when he's not betting on them? If Isaiah Rodgers was placing wagers on the Colts to win in 10 of the 16 or 17, 10 of the 17, and I have no idea how many games it was. I'm just speaking in hypothetical.
Right. We have no details on the
Correct.
types of bets.
But if in 10 of the games the Colts played, Isaiah Rodgers was placing wagers on the Colts, then what does that tell you about the 7 where he didn't? That he didn't believe they were going to win? And does that impact, believe it or not, and this sounds crazy to say, but believe it or not, one of the things that the NFL most wants is integrity for its gamblers.
Without question.
I mean, it wants.
That's why you have an injury report.
That's exactly correct. So when you start having players that are not wagering on, well, wait a minute, this guy's wagered on the Colts 10 times and he's in the locker room and he knows, and he's not confident enough to wager on them this week.
To cover 3 against the Steelers,
Correct.
Whatever. Yeah,
that becomes an issue.
I guess I feel the need to note this, Jake, because when the play happened, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, there were about 3 Colts defensive backs on that play that looked like they just waved the white flag. They looked like they threw the game. And that was the final touchdown of the season by the Houston Texans. Do you remember that pseudo Hail Mary the Texans threw? Where it looked like it just went right. The Colts players mistimed it in the end zone. Like it looked like a JV team trying to defend a Hail Mary. I should note Isaiah Rodgers was not on the field for that play. I had some people kind of bringing that up yesterday to me, and Rodgers was inactive for the final 2 games of the season due to injury. 9 games he did start this past season for the Colts. Good Tuesday morning to you. Certainly we're going to hit on this topic a whole lot today. As Jake mentioned, Zaire Franklin is going to join us at 8, and I do feel the need to mention that this Franklin interview is something that I set up with the Colts late last week. So this was not something that all of a sudden arose in the last 12, 24 hours. We will ask Zaire about probably a little bit more of the educational side of what players receive on that end with gambling. If I'm not mistaken, I believe there are signs literally in the locker room telling them that you are not allowed to do that. To me, it seems rather obvious, but it's not a topic we're going to hit on very long with Zaire. Again, the interview was planned with him before this. I appreciate him and the Colts still allowing him to hop on with us. But he is also a captain on this football team, and I do think he will provide some good perspective, not only that, but just the offseason program in general. On the Rodgers front, Jake, more on him individually. Again, the final year of his rookie contract. For those unfamiliar with how these contract structures work, when you are a day 3 pick like Rodgers, he was a 6th-round pick out of UMass a few years ago. He made under $1 million annually each of his first 3 years. The contract rises to north of $2 million this year. So if you are a day 3 draft pick like him and you reach year 4, the final year of that rookie deal, that is by far your biggest payday you've had so far in the NFL. So he was due and I guess I should speak in the present tense still. He is due a really nice payday for this 4th NFL season. You couple that with the depth chart at corner. He is easily the 2nd most experienced corner of anybody on the roster. And you consider what a contract year means for a day 3 pick. Zaire Franklin's a great example of it, Jake. He was a 7th rounder. You get to a 2nd contract as a day 3 draft pick, you've quote-unquote made it in the NFL. You have gotten to that, probably year 4, 5, maybe even 6 in the NFL. That is a huge, huge element financially, all of those things. So for all of those reasons, Isaiah Rodgers has a huge year in front of him, individually, contractually, and the Colts need him. The Colts drafted 3 rookie corners. Dallas Flowers is their biggest returner at corner, not named Kenny Moore. And again, Kenny Moore is more of a nickel and a slot. So for all those reasons, this comes at a position group where the Colts are really, really in need of someone to emerge, some sort of veteran presence. I guess last thing I will mention on the Rodgers and a punishment situation here, Jake, if I follow the Detroit Lions situation, and Detroit had 5 players involved, basically, if you bet on an NFL game, no matter the team, you were out for a year. That was the punishment handed down by the league with the Lions. If you did not bet on an NFL game, but did place a bet on another professional sports league at the team facility, it was 6 games. I think Jamison Williams, the wide receiver out of Alabama, top 10 pick, he fell into that category where he bet at the team facility, which you're not allowed to do, on a separate professional sports league, and he got 6 games. Whereas the guys that got a full year, or in Calvin Ridley's case, when he got a full year, he bet on NFL games. Again, no matter your team or not, that was the punishment there. So if we're trying to gauge what the punishment could look like here, if you bet on any NFL game, whether it was your own team or not, you're looking at least a year.
So,
and I would release him, but that's me.
So, for example, we're going to speak just to not implicate any players into, whatever. Jim Smith. Okay, Jim Smith's a linebacker for an NFL franchise. Jim Smith has an app that he wagers on games like all of us have or have discussed or talked about, whatever. And he's sitting in his locker one day. They got team meetings in a half an hour, and he's sitting there on Twitter, and he's messing around, and he scans over on his apps, and he opens up that app, and he looks at it, and he says, oh, my favorite baseball team has a home game tonight, and I really like them. And I'm going to go to B-Dubs and watch the game. So he puts $20 on the baseball team, but he's sitting inside his locker in the facility. That is a violation of the stated and agreed upon NFL rules, correct?
Correct. Which, again, we can disagree with that rule.
He waits until he goes to the food court across the street and does it.
He's
no
good.
harm, no foul, right?
He's good. And again, we can debate those rules, but those are the rules that are laid out. And, part of me sits here and looks at this Rodgers situation. Jake, if he bet for the Colts last year, would you call him the most loyal Colt of all time, or would you call him the dumbest Colt of all time?
Now say that again.
If Isaiah Rodgers was betting for the Colts in games last season, would you call him the most loyal Colt of all time and build a statue for him, or would you call him the dumbest Colt of all time for thinking the Colts were going to win?
Fair. Dumbest for sure. I mean,
this Vikings game is a lock. No way we're losing.
Halftime goes over to the phone to make sure he can fire one. I just,
you know what?
To me, I know this sounds harsh, but Jake, I just cut him for the stupidity more than anything. If you really want to do this, you can make it work. You can, to your point, Jake, go to the food court, call your buddy once you get home to your apartment and say, John, go ahead and bet on this for me, and swear John to secrecy. Or, hey, Farkas, place this bet, and no one's ever going to know about it.
I think that scenario is yet to be unearthed. And I think at that point you might see that then all of a sudden you've got a hornet's nest.
And you mean that like there's more than one player involved?
No, like that he might have been involved in. I don't know this, but I think that there is probably some investigation as to the depth in which, because if you have a CDL license and your livelihood is based on driving a semi-truck, speeding tickets are more detrimental to you than if you're a guy driving down 31 and you're 10 miles over the limit in your Honda Accord, right? And however, if you have a CDL license and you are an automobile driver for a living, whether the ticket is for 35 over or 15 over, it's still a ticket on your record that goes against your employment, record. And in this case, I think we would like to think that he simply is a guy that was caught doing 15 miles over in his Honda Accord. I worry that actually he is a CDL driver who had a number of fairly large speeding tickets.
Jake, one of the things I've always thought about players in these gambling situations, outside of just betting for or against your team, I felt like one of the biggest areas where players could provide insight, intel, whatever, to their friends, to their family members about games is more on the individual player bets. You know, how many times do we sit here on a Friday and we say, boy, guys, Michael Pittman over under 4.5 catches. Don't you just hammer that over? And if you are a player, in Isaiah Rodgers' case, you have practiced all week long. You've seen the offensive game plan. You have seen, oh, wow, they want to feature Nyheim Hines big time this week. Or they say Jonathan Taylor is limited in practice. He's not practicing. He's going to be really scaled back on Sunday. So then you go to your little player prop section, and that's where I feel like you can really, in a little bit more of a discreet fashion, because you're not betting necessarily the money line on the team or the spread on the team, but you're still doing these player props where, oh yeah, I know Alec Pierce has been featured a lot in practice this week. I'm taking the over on Alec Pierce. That's where I felt like guys could do this a little bit more, I don't know, somewhat under the radar.
You know, when I was in college, Kevin, and this was when I was in college, sports gambling was still a very taboo thing. Now, I'm not saying taboo like people didn't do it. I'm saying like you didn't have the legality or the tolerance for it like you have now in the apps and everything else, right? I was sitting in my apartment in Bloomington, and there was a basketball player for Indiana who lived in the complex. It was not my roommate, but lived in the complex or near the complex where I lived, was in and out a lot. And there was a guy also in my apartment complex. Everybody knew in college, like you probably had a guy like this, Kevin, that there was like a guy that just hung around that was from like an Indiana town and didn't go to IU or didn't go to Ball State or didn't go to Indiana State or whatever, but was like his parents thought he was in school.
Oh, yeah.
And he was just hanging out. Like his nickname was like Pops. And he was like 26.
There was time I'm like, are you paying rent?
You know what I mean? So there was a guy like that was a bookie that lived in my apartment complex. Everybody knew he's a bookie.
This really fits the bill. Keep on going with this one.
Everybody knew it, right? And so one day, one of the basketball players at Indiana was in our apartment, and there's a knock at the door. And we open the door, and it's like, oh, that's the guy that I think is a bookie. And he looks at said player and says, listen, you had a great game last game. I kid you not. And right there hands him $500 in cash. He goes, I want you to have this, and then there's more where that came from if you just keep me abreast on when you guys are dinged up or when you have tough games coming up, or if you continue to play well, there's always more where that came from. And I'm standing there like, holy cow. And this player, who was a player of fairly decent prominence at Indiana, I kid you not, and I would put my hand on the good book, as they say in Shawshank Redemption, and tell you this, that I'm not lying at all, looked right at him and said, I don't ever want to see you again. No way I'm doing that. And I couldn't, of course, I'm sitting there thinking like, well, hell, I'll take it. But he looked at him and was like, there is no way I'm doing that. Like, I don't ever want to see you again, and don't ever mention something like that to me again. And that was it. And I witnessed the whole thing. But at that time, Kevin, that was like my peek behind the curtain where I'm like, and that was 30 years ago before any of this. And I'm like, this stuff is everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Paul Horning, right, Jake? Alex Karras?
Yeah.
You bet, was it 62, 63 season? Suspended for a year. I mean, again, right. The accessibility of mobile apps and the NFL in bed with gambling partners is a whole lot different some 60 years later. But let's not act like we just woke up today and this is prevalent. It's more prevalent because the accessibility is obviously through the roof. It's hard for me to get past this man has jeopardized a 2.5, whatever he's due, $2.4 million contract year, a chance to earn a 2 or 3 year contract as a 6th-round draft pick for $25 and $50 bets.
I know.
I hate to use the word stupid, but the stupidity level of that I cannot get past.
Kevin, I also understand. I'm in agreement with you, but to play devil's advocate, I also understand that if you are a 25-year-old player in the National Football League, you're 3 years removed from college, and you are in a world where you are surrounded by the promotion advertising and endorsement of these sorts of all the gambling stuff, and you are desensitized to it. You're like, everybody does
there's
this.
Signs in the locker room.
I get it.
And
I totally get it.
Your agent better be educating you to the nth
But
degree.
he's probably,
David Thornton's got to be doing that inside the Colts building. Like, I would have almost more sympathy, Jake, if it was a 6-month rookie. It was a guy 6 months into his rookie career. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers has been in the league for this fourth season.
Again, I want to make very clear here. I'm not in any way, shape, or form endorsing or excusing this, but the problem is this, and this is what I always said, Kevin, about Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan had huge gambling debts, and people are like, who cares? Michael Jordan's worth $500 million at that time. And I'm like, you don't understand. Michael Jordan owing a guy $1,500 is nothing to Michael Jordan, but it's a lot to the guy he owes $1,500 to. In Isaiah Rodgers' case, a $25 or $50 bet is literally the nickel slots to you or me in Vegas. We don't even stop and play at them because it's just like, it's a waste of my time. What am I going to win? $5? And to Isaiah Rodgers, he probably was thinking to himself, these are the nickel slots. I can get away with this. Who cares? $25. And then the next day, I put down a $25 bet. I'll do 2 today. Who cares? Wednesday, I did 2 of them. I'll do 3 today. Who cares? And then before you know it, you're in a hornet's nest. And
hell yeah, I'm taking Matt Ryan over 2.5 interceptions. Did you see him yesterday in practice?
Right. I mean,
things I'm looking forward to today, Jake, or I should say in the coming week, and feel free to add anything more to this. NFL/Colts, do we get more of a statement on either of those ends? Again, the NFL has been serving the punishments for this. We are scheduled to hear from Shane Steichen tomorrow. That is the next open OTA session. So, again, we're going to have Zaire Franklin on at 8. We'll ask Zaire kind of an initial question about that, and then we'll move on to other stuff. We appreciate the Colts and Zaire for continuing to kind of hold true to the interview that they agreed to late last week, but it's not something we'll hit on too long with him. Other topics we can get into a little bit later today. Trayce Jackson-Davis seemed pretty pleased with his workout yesterday. By all accounts, I know the Arizona kid he was going up against was really complimentary of how Trayce shot it in that workout with the Pacers. The Pacers have probably their most intriguing group workout of the day. I would say a couple of top 20 type picks in the building coming up later today, so we can touch on that. And then Indiana State, Jake, they are the most northern team left of the 16 remaining in the NCAA baseball bracket. They are off to TCU.
And boy, there's some brouhaha about that.
And the fact that they are hitting the road because TCU was not a regional host. TCU upset Arkansas in that Fayetteville regional, so technically Indiana State would host this, but they are not able to due to hotel and staffing situations. We'll chat more about that. I think it'll be this weekend, Saturday, I would guess, maybe even Friday, that they'll start game 1 of that 3-game series. It's a really hot TCU team that Indiana State's going to play as they try to go to Omaha. So we can touch on that. Zaire Franklin coming up at 8 o'clock. Steph Wilson at 9 o'clock. I thought it was a tad hazy coming into work this morning.
You know what that is, don't you? This is awful. I did not realize this until this morning I heard about it.
No, I did not.
Wildfires in Canada. What you're seeing in the air is the smoke from the wildfires in Canada.
Wow, I noticed that.
In Alberta, Canada, which is like north of Montana. I kid you not.
I guess I was I'm driving south coming down here, but I noticed it more south of the city. I guess I could have turned around and
But that's what I'm in agreement with you. I heard that this morning. I thought, really? And then I was driving down and I'm like, holy cow, there really is like smoke in the air.
Interesting.
Yep.
We'll talk a lot about the Isaiah Rodgers situation. If you guys have thoughts, KBone1070 on Twitter, at jQuery on Twitter as well. Again, Zaire Franklin, top of the 8 o'clock hour. Steph Wilson, that's 9 o'clock, right, guys?
Yep. Correct.
9 o'clock for Steph Wilson. It is a nice start, though, to this Tuesday morning here in Indianapolis. Kevin and Corey on 93.5, 107.5.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Major League Baseball yesterday, it was the Cincinnati Reds.
How about Andrew Abbott's Major League debut?
2-0 over the Atlanta Braves.
1 hit, 6 innings.
I don't see Mark playing the let's make fun of the Reds button, especially when the Reds win, and his Cubs yesterday blanked by the Pods 5-0.
That's okay. Can't go 162-0. Can't do it.
I believe the Reds have a better record than the Cubs.
Yeah, it's June.
Rays over the Red Sox yesterday, and it was Houston 11-4 over Toronto. Light day in Major League Baseball, right?
Yeah, light Monday. Indians again back at home this week. I believe Quentin Nelson, the Colts have an event out there on Thursday, so if you're looking to see Big Q out there, gates open at 6 o'clock coming up on Thursday.
You want another swish? I just did one. There's another one.
I'm not hearing him.
I'm not hearing him.
People.
Are you
Turn
still
your
work here,
headsets
Mark?
up.
Last night in the Stanley Cup Final, a lot of goals and a lot of fights. Vegas 7-2 winners. They have been dominant in these first 2 games. 12 goals scored by Vegas so far. That is the most through 2 games in Stanley Cup Final history. Thought I saw over 140 minutes of penalties last night in Game 2.
Hell yeah. Right? Did you watch?
Fighting goals. Watched a little bit, and then Mark and I were talking about it before you got in, Jake. I mean, you could tune it out by what? Second period? It was over.
By the way, yesterday we had mentioned this. I only mentioned this in the check down because it had relevance to a kind of a blip discussion yesterday that we had. It appears San Diego is set to become the newest MLS expansion franchise. That is because one of the investors involved agreed to pay, apparently, the MLS franchise expansion fee of $500 million. So we were talking yesterday about what it would cost for the Indy 11 to become an MLS franchise. If you're going off of that, off the report, $500 million.
Ursal got that in his pocket?
We're going to have a really nice stadium for a USL soccer team. It would make...
Have they been public about wanting to be in the MLS? I haven't followed it as closely as probably I should.
Yeah, I think that part of the...
Because I feel like if they really wanted to be in the MLS, I would hear like tons and tons of news.
Part of
it.
the stadium, well, when you're talking about a stadium complex that's $1 billion, that seats 20,000 people, to your point, Kevin, I don't know that the Indy 11 have been the ones that have specifically said this will help us get into the MLS, but like the fan base certainly is like, we got to do this so that we can get them into the MLS. And when you consider that there are already 5 franchises within a 5-hour drive of Indianapolis in the MLS, and there's a $500 million expansion fee precedent, I would say the odds are slim that the Indy 11 go to the MLS.
Along with the Isaiah Rodgers news from yesterday, the Colts did sign a veteran wideout. We'll chat more about that on the other side. Again, Zaire Franklin going to join us at 8 o'clock coming up here in a bit. Kevin Aquari on a Tuesday.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
We will talk plenty about the Isaiah Rodgers situation as we did for the first essentially 40 minutes of the show there, and we'll continue to do so over the course of the morning. The other story yesterday that was pretty big. I mean, if it weren't for the Isaiah Rodgers situation, probably would have been one of the bigger storylines. I know JMV, understandably so, has been all over this story. But that is the fact that, and it is very unfortunate. Kudos to Indiana State baseball for sure for their continuation here in the College World Series and the march to Omaha, but it is disappointing, obviously, that they are not going to be able to host when that team and that program have earned the right to host here in the Super Regional, and instead they're going to be on the road.
Yeah, and I would say unfortunate is probably the word to use, Jake. I'm not going to sit here and just all of a sudden rip Indiana State, whatever, the athletic department, the Terre Haute tourism, whoever else people want to blame. The reason for this, it appears, is due to hotel and staffing issues. Coming up this weekend, Terre Haute will host the 51st, I believe it's the 51st annual State Summer Special Olympics. Just an awesome event. Been fortunate to be involved with Special Olympics. It is so cool to see these athletes just share in that joy. And this is a massive event. 3,000 athletes, over 1,500 volunteers. I mean, when you have 3,000 athletes, Jake, think about how many people are associated with each of those athletes, whether it's a coach, whether it's a family member, whether it's friends. This is a big deal. It's a big event. Great on Terre Haute for being able to host this. Obviously, it's a prior obligation to it. Should we just be ripping the athletic department again, or the city of tourism, because they should have had the foresight to see Indiana State in a super regional? I just can't go there. There are some questions I have. Could you have tried to play the super regional in Bloomington or in West Lafayette? Obviously IU could have been in it. They aren't, with them losing last night. They would have been on the road, I think, at LSU anyways.
Kevin, I actually thought about Victory Field.
Well, Victory Field has games.
I know, and then I looked, and the Indians are home.
Yeah, so game. I thought, could you go down to Evansville? I know Bosse Field's a really iconic place down there. But basically, Arkansas was supposed to be the super regional host. They were the 3 seed. Indiana State was the 14. Arkansas lost to TCU. So then Indiana State became the host on paper. And then once it was deemed that from a hotel staffing standpoint, they could not handle that, that's why they will be in Fort Worth coming up this weekend. So I just chalk it up to more as a bummer. I don't think, at least in my opinion, I'm not one that's just absolutely going to rip Indiana State. I'm sure they exhausted everything. I'm sure they thought about it, send emails out to alumni and saying, hey, can we put the TCU kids in the dorms? But then you've got NCAA personnel, you've got ESPN personnel that we put on the games. It sounds like staffing was a real issue, which I assume a lot of people are involved in the Special Olympics. So yeah. Here
is the statement from Indiana State. And I believe yesterday their coach was on with JMV and said that it was an issue. And I think that there is, and I think that there were a lot of people, because I was told originally, they can't host because their stadium is too small. That was kind of the initial thought. This is from the Indiana State Athletic Department last night. Quote, "We'd like to take a moment to thank all our fans, supporters, and the entire Terre Haute community for the amazing outpouring of support the past weekend at the Terre Haute Regional. Due to prior commitments, accommodations not available, and the community preparing to welcome Indiana Special Olympics for the 51st year, we are unable to host the NCAA Super Regionals in the coming week. There are a variety of factors that come into play with the competition for resources and staff, with the potential for multiple large-scale events occurring in the area simultaneously, and due to NCAA limitations on hotel distance from the field, there's a lack of hotel space to handle the accommodations required to house the visiting team, the support staff for the games, and the ESPN production crew that would be in attendance. Finally, the personnel to run the event is a factor we must consider. After hosting the Missouri Valley tournament at the Terre Haute Regional in back-to-back weeks. Keeping additional staff available that are not already working with Special Olympics has affected our potential workforce for another large-scale operation. Then it goes on, we have a great relationship with Special Olympics coming to Terre Haute. We welcome them to our community this weekend and look forward to putting on another great event for them this year. I would say this. I know it's terribly disappointing for the Ball State baseball community and their fans.
Indiana State.
Did I say Ball State? Excuse me, Indiana State. And I absolutely appreciate and respect that the players, the staff, the coaching staff at Indiana State deserves and earned the right to host those games. At the same time, part of the lessons of college is about learning how to deal with and learn from situations in real life. College is about preparation for real life. And in real life, sometimes things get thrown your way beyond your own control, and you have to then adjust and make the best of the situation. I commend Indiana State for the city of Terre Haute, as you had said, Kevin, for realizing that their priority and their prior commitment, because what you learn in life is that it's important to stand by your commitments. Their commitments and everything are towards the Special Olympics that was already arranged to be there. And that is an unfortunate circumstance and a huge disappointment for those players that deserved the right to host. But sometimes life throws you a curveball or the stars just don't align and you have to adjust.
It's a bummer.
It is.
Now, it sounds like they're going to be playing quite the hot baseball team. TCU has won 8 straight. The runs scored for the Horned Frogs in those 8 games, 16, 14, 6, 12, 12, 20, and 12. That's quite the team they're going to be facing this weekend. Again, got to win 2 or 3 to go to Omaha. So Indiana State to Fort Worth for that one. Indiana losing last night 4-2 to Kentucky. Left, my guess is 1 million runners on base in that one. So Kentucky
That's a
advances. Lot. Yeah. Had chances, certainly. Had 2 of them, I guess, when you think about the games against Kentucky. It was double elimination. Had 2 chances to beat Kentucky and move on to the Super Regional. They did not. Zaire Franklin, by the way, going to join us here in about 10 minutes.
That Colts million runners that IU left on base, if each one of them chips in $1,000, we could pay off the soccer stadium.
I thought you were going to go with Isaiah Rodgers' joke there for a second. No. What are your questions, Rodgers related? Types of bets, sure. When the Colts knew, like some clarity on that. Those are probably the biggest ones for me.
Odds it's an isolated incident.
Yeah, the isolation aspect for sure. I think the initial report said it was isolated, for what it's worth.
I mean, I get that. And I say this as we could be talking about any sport. So I'm not saying this as any indictment on the character or a trend with the Colts in any way, shape, or form. I think that quite frankly, Kevin, when you're dealing with how many players, there's 52 players on the roster, then how many practice squad players?
I think it's like 16 now, I think.
Okay. And then guys on, IR that, whatever. I mean, let's say 70. When you're dealing with 70 young people between the ages of 21 and 35 for the most part, that even though many of them may not have grown up around tremendous wealth, that for the most part, relative to the average person, their lifestyle is that of tremendous wealth. And they also are engrossed in and involved in a society and a culture that has essentially been desensitized to gambling. Even though they are hit over the head every single day with you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. It is, to me, not surprising that they would be a little bit tone deaf as to the severity and the long-term implication or ramification of their actions when it relates to that topic, based on the imperfect storm of age, naivete, and detach from the reality. Gambling rules and gambling hotlines and all that, gambling addiction runs rampant no matter what walk of life, what level of income, etc. But a lot of those rules and policies and things like that are initially set up for the person that $1,000 bet to them is a life-altering type thing. And I understand that for an NFL player, a $25 or $50 bet is like playing the nickel slots. And so they're desensitized to the fact that what they are getting involved in is something that has it's not a ripple in the canal. It is a boulder splashing into it. And I understand the naivete there. And
risking it all on a $25 or $50
totally
bet.
understand. Totally understand. It would, I believe the law of averages would say that he is not the only player to be involved in something like this. I mean, there's already precedent that he's not. That is not to say that it makes it right. It's to say that you wonder if this is just a beam of light coming through a door that's about to swing wide open.
And Zaire Franklin going to join us on the other side. We'll ask Zaire initially about just kind of a little bit more on the educational front of how players are informed about the gambling policy for the league, the do's and the don'ts of it. But certainly the majority of the interview will be focused a little bit more on the offseason program, where things stand so far for the Colts and Zaire heading into his 6th NFL season. So he joins us on the other side. Kevin and Query here on a Tuesday.
Listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
The 8 o'clock hour is underway in Indianapolis. My name is Jay Query, Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton here as well. As we talked about for the first hour, obviously the big story within the Colts is that of Isaiah Rodgers, who yesterday admitted to, confessed to, issued a statement about the fact that he is the player investigated for gambling by the National Football League. And joining us now on the Payless Liquors hotline as part of actually an arranged and scheduled interview for a couple of days now to talk about OTAs is one of the captains for the Colts, Zaire Franklin. And Zaire, let me begin by saying this. I am well aware of and respect the fact that this is an ongoing investigation. Thus, I think it would be a combination of arrogant and naive on my behalf to expect that you would have some sort of long, flowery discussion about it, because it would be my assumption you probably can't talk a lot about an ongoing investigation. But since Isaiah Rodgers has himself confessed to this essentially and apologized for it last night, I just wanted you to have the opportunity as a captain of the Colts to be able to make a statement or just respond, I guess, for the fans there in terms of what you can say about it.
So, first off, good morning. Appreciate you guys having me on. That was a hell of a song selection, by the way. But
shout out Mark Dykton.
Just regarding the situation with Isaiah, obviously extremely unfortunate. Love Isaiah as a teammate, as a person. Great man, bro. Great father. And knowing just a genuinely good person. But made a mistake, and I just feel like, as far as the players go, and as far as like this next, step of the league and the next, phase of the league with the whole gambling being, prevalent in our game today, I just think just the more education that we can get, the more aware we are, the more aware of our resources that are available, from the league, from the PA to the players, specific guidelines of what's going on. And, to be honest, it's just a really unfortunate situation. Obviously, we care about him. We hold him tight. He means a lot to us, kind of regardless of how it goes. But it's just, like I said, it's a tough situation. Obviously, it's still an ongoing thing. And it's just unfortunate, to be honest with you.
Zaire, I do want to move on, but I am curious about the educational process and what you guys, or how you learn about the NFL's gambling policy and things like that. I believe there are some signs in your locker room that kind of indicate, no gambling, especially on premise, et cetera, et cetera. What is that process like for you guys in the off season or even in season in learning about what the league's gambling policy is?
Yeah, so, not to really get too much into it, but this year we had a meeting with compliance, kind of just talking about the do's and don'ts. I think it was just a lot of gray and maybe a little misunderstanding in some areas. Just kind of what a sports book is. And, I got guys nobody even knows what a sports book is. You know what I mean? So just kind of clarifying stuff like that. And just kind of talking through the guidelines of, what we can and can't do as professional athletes and as members of the NFL. So they're doing their best to get the information out. Obviously, the PA is being very active, with our reps coming into the locker room, having those conversations with the entire group and one-on-one combos in the locker room as well. So, like I said, it's a new phase, it's a new element to the game. And with that new element, we got to, be conscious of the new guidelines and the new different things that kind of come along with that.
Appreciate you fielding those two. Shifting gears to where you guys are at right now on June 6th. Again, Zaire Franklin with us here, heading into his 6th season, captain for the Colts. He's with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Zaire, how would you describe maybe the mood right now for you guys on June 6th compared to where it was maybe last January on January 6th?
Oh, man. To be honest, man, it's just more fun, bro. It's hard to even describe. We just really just be having a good time. Energy in the practice is just I don't know, it's just exciting. I think we got a lot of young guys, a lot of guys that's looking to prove themselves, a lot of proven guys that's looking to re-solidify who they are in the league and to our team. And honestly, I just feel like with everybody counting us out, it's funny. You look on TV and you look at all those power rankings and stuff. I remember I'm 18, sitting in the lunchroom, TV telling us that we're terrible, that luck is done, and I'm Andrew's walking right behind me drinking a bowl of cereal, I think, and we ranked 32. The next thing you know, we win 10 straight. So it's so funny how the league goes, and it's understood. You kind of earn the reputation that you have. But I would just say right now, man, we just locked in, having fun, just focused on getting better. There's just so much new energy, so much new guys coming in, and just really looking forward to the opportunity to compete again this year. When you go into like OTAs, for example, Zaire Franklin is our guest. How much of that is, and this is going to sound such an elementary question, how much of this time is just about like the bond, if you will, like truly gaining teammates and getting to know one another so that then when it comes time for football action, there is a trust amongst one another? I would say it plays a big part. Obviously, repetition is king. So the many reps as you can get as a team, as an offense, as a defense, special teams, going over your schemes, working through different things. Obviously, is a big thing for the coaches. They're putting in defenses, putting in plays. Trying to figure out what works, trying to learn about the dynamic and actually the team that we have. So obviously that's priority number one. But I would say, a major part of OTAs and something that we really haven't had a chance to really experience for the most part. Obviously, when COVID knocked everything off for a couple of years, is really just, guys just being in the building, kind of getting into that routine early. Getting acquainted with the city if you knew, kind of rebuilding and reestablishing a routine if you've been around. And like you say, obviously just guys getting together, man. That relationship that you build in the locker room, off the field, it can't help but translate over. And I think we've been blessed to have a great locker room. I specifically, our linebacker room and our defense and stuff too. So we're always been very close, and obviously just through the ups and downs of things that we're going through, I think that's allowed us to remain strong and tight together. And I think now with just this, burst of new blood and new energy into the building, I think it's great for us to be able to just really come together and come to get on one accord and really continue to build each other. Because championships and wins, they start getting built right now. They don't get built in August. So the sooner you get to it, the faster you get better. From a fan standpoint and media standpoint, there's always curiosity about players coming off injury. I get that it's your teammate. I get that you don't want to interfere with like the rehab of a player because you probably know what that's like as a player. But how much concern, I guess, is about Shaquille Leonard just in terms of your interest level in his rebound because of the fact that not only does it affect your guys' team because he's a great player, but your core in your room as well. What is the mindset and the approach in that situation? Well, I think, and I understand, I guess your perspective, from a fan and from a media point, when a guy, has missed games or something like that, how that could, create somewhat of an uneasiness. But I think when you got a guy like Shaq, bro, who comes in and is just so consistent with his level of work and his commitment, his dedication to the game, his dedication to the team, when you got a guy like that, it's almost just like, okay, he's over here, he's taking care of what he got to take care of. We're going to focus on what we focus on. And just prepare for him. Prepare for, when they come back, however he needs to come back, what capacity is. Because when you got a guy that's just constantly taking care of their business, who's always on it, who's always going out their way to do extra, who's always going out their way, he's flying doctor. He's doing a whole lot of things, really everything he can to, be the best version of himself and be back on the field. When you got a guy that's committed to it like that, I don't really think there's really any concern within the building because you see a guy going 110%, going that extra mile to do what he needs to do to get on the field. I think you only really have concern when you got a guy that's missing treatment time and stuff like that. If it was something like that, then it's a problem. But, when you got a guy like Shaq who just locked in and he's constantly raising the bar even when, the opinion or whatever is not really, in his favor, I think, we don't even worry about it in the building, to be honest with you. What teammate most intrigues or excites you on the field that you look at and you go, man, I can't wait to see how this guy's going to play? Ooh, it's a few. It's a few, honestly. I love that D-line, man. I really think our D-line is the most underrated in the league, to be honest with you. Samson is a guy that I trained with for a couple of years, especially when I was a rookie, second year. So really looking forward to seeing how him and Quiddy match up. Obviously, Buck and Grove, looking forward to seeing how them two take that next step. But if I'm really being honest, it's probably AR. To be honest with you, he the new shining star in the building. Everybody, he's the guy that everybody's going to pay tickets to see. Obviously, he's flashed, a ton, making a bunch of plays in OTAs. Obviously, some highs and lows. It ain't, all perfect. But, I think as he continues to grow, continue to build, I think he actually has all the tools to be special.
Again, Zaire Franklin with us, year 6 for the captain from Syracuse. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. I want to hit on Anthony Richardson a little bit more there. You touched on some of your impressions on the practice field. When you get to like a Tuesday and you realize you're facing kind of a dual threat quarterback, as a linebacker, as a captain, as a signal caller, how does that change your thought process during the week versus maybe more of a traditional pocket passer?
Oh man, it completely changes how you look at the game and approach it. Like when you have a quarterback who's a true dual threat, it's the threat of them. Whether it's a quarterback design run or everybody dropping off, you got perfect coverage. Everybody can be covered. You can see a scheme, know the routes they're going to run, and fit it up perfectly, and then they can scamper for 10, 15 yards. Just like that thought and that thing in the back of your mind, I think is just that in and of itself is a threat. Add to somebody that's dynamic running the ball like, Anthony or, someone like Lamar or something like that. I think it just brings an entire element to the game. Even, in terms of, not even just design calls, but even as a pocket passer, when you got somebody who's athletic like that, when you're rushing, you understand that there's another element. I got to actually tackle this dude. He's not just like, quote unquote, a statue or somebody that you can run down. When we go against running quarterbacks or quarterbacks who are extremely mobile, we got to talk to our D-line. Look, the D-line can't just fly up the field and just go rush because you might create a lane. This dude might be able to step up, and whether that's make a big throw down the field or, scramble for a significant gain. And now you got to take somebody out of coverage, or now in your coverage, you just got that in the back of your mind. Maybe you're not playing this tight man coverage. So it's definitely a different dynamic, and I think that's why the NFL is moving so much more towards mobile quarterbacks, just because they just bring so much to the game.
I'll leave this pretty open-ended because I think your tweet a few weeks ago addressed it pretty accurately, but as someone that got his start on the NFL and entrenching himself as a special teamer, your thoughts on the new kickoff rule?
Man, I just think, when it comes to the league, and I understand, player safety is obviously number one. Progressing our league is obviously priority, a high priority on the league's list. But I just think, special teams is a major part of the game. We watched playoff games. We watched Super Bowls. We watched, some of the biggest games, some of our favorite games all the time be changed by the dynamic of special teams, whether that's, a kickoff return, whether that's punt or punt return. I think special teams is a major part of the game. And to just maybe move to a part where you're trying to phase out a part of a game, first of all, you're taking away from the game, because at a certain point, I understand every year you got to add rules. Every year you got to critique. Every year you got to hone in and try to make the game better. But at what point are you actually taking away from, what actually makes the game beautiful in and of itself? I think sometimes it's just, I get we got player safety, but man, this is football, man. You don't see boxers telling them, oh, no body shots, or like no face shots. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a physical game. If we wanted to play two-hand touch, we could have signed up to do that a long time ago. I think the physical element of a game is a part of what makes the game great. And I understand that, obviously with the technology and everything that's coming on, we want to keep everybody safe. But, I don't know. I'm just where I'm from is just, look, if you're scared, go get a dog, But if you ain't scared, go play. That's just where I'm from.
Zaire, I'm curious.
Or a cat, Jake. You got a cat, right?
I do have a cat. Yeah, that's correct.
I had a cat, though. I love cats, too. I'm both.
Oh, there you go. All right, I like that. See, cats are cool. Okay, Zaire, you're a native of Philly. We might have discussed this before. I don't remember whether I was at Penn Station or Hoagies and Hops. They're both great, and I'm getting a sandwich, and somebody blasted me for putting ketchup on it. And then I heard that you actually either ketchup or mustard you are willing to put on a Philly steak and cheese. Now you would be a resident expert on this. Is that a violation? I don't think it is to put ketchup on a steak and a Philly steak and cheese. Your thoughts?
Well, let me first off start by saying my order for all those listening. First of all, shout out to Hoagies and Hops. But salt, pepper, ketchup is just a staple. Where I'm from in Philly, salt, pepper, ketchup is just where you start at. So ketchup is a mainstay. I like mustard. I like mayonnaise. I like sweet peppers every now and then, and I'm obviously going to throw fried onions. That's my order. But I think what people don't understand is a cheesesteak is it's like a personality thing. I got friends who get lettuce and tomatoes on their cheesesteak. Now, I think that's ridiculous. But listen, if that's what you like, and that's what, more power to you. So there's no right or wrong answer to your cheesesteak. But, yes, I put ketchup and mustard on my steak, but, that's just me. It is what it is.
See, this totally validates me, which I love. And I'm going to now label you as this is like the fourth time you've been on with us, so you're officially, I think, friend of the show.
I appreciate that.
So my last question for you is this, Zaire. I think people and fans love your story, right? This is a city that, probably not unlike Philly, loves a guy that just, based on bringing his lunch pail every day, works his way through the roster, which is what you've done. When you look at it now, and you're a leader of this franchise, you look at the young guys around you, and which one most reminds you of the young Zaire Franklin?
Man, that's tough. I just think for myself, just the journey that I had. I don't know. I feel like I just had great vets, man. I've always had great guys to kind of base myself off of and just really learn from. To be honest, I love JoJo. That's my guy, young rook in the room. Very humble man, all about the grind. Love young Grant. Obviously, I love my young LBs, Shagun. Love the young LBs. And I think that's to be seen, to be honest with you. I feel like we got a great group of young guys that came in, especially the young rookies. Obviously, we still getting to know them. They still getting to know me. But, I really felt like, throughout my journey in the league, it was filled with highs and lows. Every year, I wasn't always, slated to be, this guy on the team. Sometimes I was just fighting to make the roster. But I think the best advice I got was from Rob Mathis, and he just told me, first of all, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and really just to run your own race. You can't, run, the race looking at the other guys in the room and what somebody else is getting, what you're not getting. And I really just think the guy that really just locks in and focuses on the grind, just focusing on getting better every single day, is just going to continue to separate themselves. But obviously, I love the young LBs. Those are my boys, man. We got them in the room. We got a great young room behind me, Shaq, and Speed. So definitely going to get a lot of the young LBs.
Zaire, we'll end with this, and really appreciate your time, especially amidst everything the last 24 hours this morning. But I want to give a chance for you to kind of explain a little bit more about your foundation. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Shalice's Angels, am I saying that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, Shalice's Angels, from a financial literacy standpoint, taking some high school kids to Google headquarters. Just talk a little bit about what you've done with the foundation, because I think it's a variety of things, variety of ages that you're impacting here.
Yes, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, so Shalice's Angels is my nonprofit named after my mother. With the primary goal of really just trying to reach young kids, specifically young women, from tough communities and tough situations, and give them experiences that they may not have had the opportunity to reach any other way. So in 2019, we took them to Google headquarters in New York City, a group of 20 kids from North Philly. Last year, we took them to Sixers headquarters. They got a chance to meet the marketing side, the business side, the finance side, kind of learn how organization works behind that. This year, we took them to Facebook, Instagram headquarters, Meta, that's the new name now, Meta headquarters in New York City. And as well, we also have a financial literacy component, just trying to teach the young kids, trying to give them tools that, I wish I had. That's kind of more for the high schoolers. We hosted a financial literacy academy in the stadium early this year in August at Lucas Oil. Had some kids in Lucas Oil the first time, and we did it in the locker room. It was a chance for them to come to the locker room, kind of see where we work at, see what we're about. And also probably try to help them, give them some tools to be better adults and better individuals, and give them a better chance of financial health. So, obviously I've been doing, community services for a long time. Being in the community is something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's really who I am at its core. And, you know, I just look forward to, you know, continuing to do these things in Indianapolis and in Philadelphia, and just continue to try to help the kids, and whether that's experiences or whether that's tools that we're giving them, just do my best to try to help them out.
Again, that is Shelice'sAngels.org, SHELICES Angels.org. Zaire, I know we threw a lot at you in this last 15, 20 minutes. Appreciate you handling it all, and good luck these final 2 weeks of the off-season program, and we'll see you in camp.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you guys.
Zaire Franklin, right there on the Payless Liquors hotline.
See, ketchup on a Philly steak and cheese, totally cool. I've known it all along.
That was when you first went there. I was curious how he would respond, but when a authentic Philadelphian
Do you like Philly?
Reacts to that, I do. I've been there twice, so I haven't been there, a ton, but I definitely like Hoagies and Hops.
There's a
Penn Station action.
You know, for Philadelphia. There's a feel and a vibe about Philadelphia that I really like. And I guess you could say that Detroit has the same feel. But Philly, it just feels kind of almost more authentic and pure. But there's just kind of this, probably Rocky has a lot to do with it. But there's this tremendous pride people in Philly have about Philly. And everything about Philly, you know, runs through them. And just the work ethic, the blue collar work ethic of Philadelphia, and the toughness. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic here, but I think that Zaire Franklin,
couldn't agree more.
It just carries with him, right? And I think there are certain players, Kevin. We were talking the other day about how every city has that athlete that is kind of one of their beloved athletes that people from other cities would be like, really? I wouldn't have guessed that of that guy. And I could see him.
He's emerging into that group.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like he could be a Gary Brackett level, Robert Mathis level guy that is very beloved here. He's really hard to not like.
You know, you listen to that, Jake, and I'm reminded in a football program that has a lot of history, why he was the first 3-time captain at Syracuse in over 100 years.
Right.
I mean, 100 years. And, you know, right now, I just look on my timeline. Andy, please more Zaire Franklin interviews. Great interview, great rep. Aaron, same thing. Randy, great interview with Z. Seems like a fantastic leader. My father-in-law texted me during that interview. Absolutely loved his answer. I think specifically on the kickoff rule. What was that one? I thought he handled it really well. And, you know, I don't want to speak for the Colts, but I don't know how many people that we would have had scheduled, Jake, before the Isaiah Rodgers interview that they would have then said, I trust that person. Like, that dude can handle it. I appreciated him fielding those 2 questions to begin. And if you guys missed that, maybe we'll chop up some of those Isaiah Rodgers related answers. Play that coming up in the 9 o'clock hour. Speaking of the 9 o'clock hour, Steph Wilson. Jake, I think a good chunk of our audience will remember that storyline from the last couple of weeks, but just for those that maybe aren't 100% plugged into IndyCar, explain, you know, everything happened 500 miles for him.
Steph Wilson's kind of the Zaire Franklin of racing, and the fact that he's a guy that maybe people didn't know his name as much, except for that Steph Wilson's older brother, Justin Wilson, was a very popular and likable driver, massive talent that was fatally injured, of course. And Steph Wilson at that time was already racing. I mean, Steph was a racer. He has just worked really hard every year to secure himself a ride in the Indy 500. A year ago, he secured a ride for this year with Don Cusick Motorsports, and Dreyer Reinbold, and had a good month. Was fast, qualified solidly in the race, and was really just all of his hard work and all of his efforts, because it really was something that he put together himself to be able to secure a ride for himself. And in the final practice, after qualifying, in the final practice, he was in an accident with Catherine Legg that broke a vertebrae or fractured a vertebrae in his back. And he's been in the hospital going through rehab. He could not start the Indy 500. And so Graham Rahal, who had been bounced, filled in for him. And Steph is here still in Indiana. I believe he lives in Colorado, and he is going home Thursday. And so I just happened to, when he got hurt, I had sent him a message just, hey, you know, get well soon. And to his credit, I mean, it was like probably 2 weeks later, he messaged me back and said, hey, I'm just now getting around all these, but thank you. We exchanged a few texts, and then I said, there's been a lot of fan support for you. Would you want to say anything to them? He's like, man, that'd be awesome. So he's going to do that at 9 o'clock this morning.
Is he going back for Game 5?
What's that?
Is he going back for Game 5? Is that why he wanted to head back to Denver?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Game 3 tomorrow
Wants
night.
to be there if the Nuggets close it out.
1-1. That series shifting, of course, to Miami. Game 5 will be in Denver. I believe that is on Monday. So that will be in the 9 o'clock hour. We'll get more into the Isaiah Rodgers situation coming up. Again, the Colts signed a veteran wideout yesterday, a former first-round pick. We'll share some thoughts on that. Let's lead off a morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You had just mentioned Game 5 in the NBA NBA Finals will be in Denver eventually after they go back to Miami. But let's begin with Game 2 of the NHL Stanley Cup Final. All Vegas as they now lead Brendan King's Florida Panthers 2-0. There were last night 114 goals and 246 fights, right?
Accurate on both of those numbers. 7-2, Vegas wins. They've scored 12 goals in the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup Final. That is the most ever through 2 games.
I just can't vibe with the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm like, really? Like, I want the Stanley Cup Final to be like Montreal and
I was going to say, can you vibe
Chicago,
with the Florida Panthers?
Or my Calgary Flames. You know what I mean? Like, I've been holding the flame for 30 years now for my Calgary Flames.
Yeah, of course. I think last year you changed to the Whalers, you changed to the Kraken, Avalanche. You had a lot, of teams at one point.
I like the Islanders. They're cool.
But yet he gets on Brendan for being a Panthers fan.
Right, exactly.
Front runner.
Now, with this series, both series, I guess, shifting to the Miami, Fort Lauderdale region, I think a little bit of the Panthers. So we will literally have an NBA Finals or a Stanley Cup Final game in the Miami area each of the next 4 nights starting Wednesday.
Party at the Boca, the phase 2 of Del Boca Vista, right?
I hope the blue pills have been delivered to the villages. That's all I can say about that. It's going to be a hell of a 4-night bender down there.
Yeah, okay. I don't know.
Man, we'll check back.
Advil, what are we talking about here?
Check back in 9 months to see if anything is.
Okay.
Esther, I'm ready.
Come on.
Was that a swoosh?
What are we doing?
Yeah, it was a swoosh.
What was that?
I think we needed a swoosh.
Major League Baseball. How about Andrew Abbott? His debut for the Reds. 1 hit in 6 innings. The Reds beat the Brewers yesterday 2-0. Cubs lose 5-0 to the Padres. Just 4 hits for the Cubs in that one. Tigers lose to the Phillies. Saw Aaron Nola for Philadelphia had a no-no going into the 7th there. Obviously, that did not come to fruition. Have we had a no-no this year?
I don't think we have. Typically, whenever there's a no-hitter brewing, I text or call my dad. I'm like, turn it on.
How is no one no-hit the A's?
They don't count if you no-hit the A's.
By the way, now talk about jinxes. That sounds like a jinx right there, calling your father about a no-hitter.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I got up this morning, felt pretty good, drove in. It is a little bit hazy because of the smoke from the Canadian wildfires, which is crazy. But I did not think that Esther, I'm ready was something that was going to be uttered on this radio show this morning.
Judith! Judith!
Hey, come on. Like, I mean, really, like, I'm trying to be a mature broadcaster here, and you guys are just off and running making the old guy jokes, and I'm 50. And
Panthers are on the board. Blue pills in the system.
I think I took an extra heart med.
And then you're making jokes about slipping one past the goalie after they've given up 12 goals in 2 games. I mean, what are we doing here?
I know we've talked about it before. How about Oklahoma softball? You guys see there in the College World Series?
Well, that's the girl that hit 65 home runs in 3 games last year, right?
51 straight victories this season. Their last loss was in February to Baylor. It's them and Florida State for the second time in 3 years here for the College World Series Championship Series. I believe that takes place here this week. They won yesterday in extras over Stanford. And on the baseball regional front, we know Indiana State is advancing. We talked about that earlier. Unfortunately, they will not be able to host in Terre Haute this weekend. They are off to Fort Worth. I looked up that drive, 12 hours from Terre Haute to Fort Worth. So we'll see about the caravan on that end. Indiana season comes to a close, 4-2 last night with Kentucky.
By the way, what was the drive again?
12 hours.
So that was the drive that Nick Yeoman, Michael Young, and Mark Janes had to make after the Texas race this year.
Oh, I forgot about that.
When the
That's
airport
when you
got
flew to
shut down?
Cincinnati?
I flew to Cincinnati, yeah.
And Mike Byron, friend of the year, came and picked you up.
He did.
Friend of the century.
I said to him, I go, hey, I got good news and bad news. What's that? I go, the good news is I got a flight to Cincinnati to get out of here. And the bad news is you're picking me up in an hour and 40 minutes.
The Indy baseball season also came to a close yesterday. They were in their version of Omaha for D2. It's in Cary, North Carolina. They were down 10-3 going to the ninth. They scored 5 runs, but lost 10-8. So the Fighting Eddie Whites, I believe his son, pretty solid pitcher for them this season. They bow out, but a hell of a season for Indy, making it to their College World Series. All right, we'll get some Colts chat on the other side. Kevin and Query here on a Tuesday.
And 107.5 The Fan. You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Jake thought about getting a keg of Little Kings last night. Care to guess what the occasion would have been? Or the reason behind it?
A keg of Little Kings for Kevin Bowen. Now, there are a lot of reasons why that might come into play.
By the way, I think a listener, Zach, said he's going to deliver some Little Kings to the
really
to the office here at some point.
Will you? And by the way, I almost feel bad for our PBR folk because I still want to do a PBR party, and now we're on the Little Kings, and I mean, I'm getting ready to go to Canada in like a month. I could bring back some Labatt's or
Ketchup-flavored chips.
Keith's ketchup-flavored chips, yeah. Now, you guys, do you want me to bring back the ketchup-flavored chips this time or no?
Sure, those are fine.
They did grow on me a little.
Have you tried the Doritos ones yet? I saw those in the store.
Yeah, I saw those in the gas station.
Yeah, I haven't tried them yet.
That's a ketchup-flavored Dorito?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I want to ruin my obsession with Doritos, so I'll probably stay away.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll have one, but then I'll go right back to the nacho cheese.
Reason why you wanted a keg o' Little Kings? Because the Reds won?
Well, I thought about it, and then I started to do a little bit more research on it, and I thought probably a skunked keg of Little Kings would be the better thing to celebrate with. The Colts have signed a veteran wide receiver.
Oh, wow.
Breshad Perriman, former first-round pick.
We talked about him yesterday, right?
In 2015. I go on Baltimore radio yesterday. Baltimore, the Ravens and Colts play each other this season. So, typically, I guess we haven't done it yet. We might do it here at some point. Get a little bit of a lay of the land of teams that are on your NFL's local team schedule. So, just happened to be on their affiliate yesterday, and they began the interview with, "Hey, congrats on Breshad Perriman. Have you guys started building the statue yet for him?" And I'm like, oh boy, is this the reputation? Like, they reacted to the Breshad Perriman, he is still in the NFL, like we would react if Bjorn Werner got signed tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a glowing endorsement, right?
No. Baltimore Ravens took him in the first round back in 2015. He didn't even make it 2 years with the Ravens. For his career, Jake, 36 catches is the most he's had in a season. Think about that. 16 games, now we're into 17 games. So the most catches he's had in a single season is 2 per game. 20 catches total. The last 2 years.
The manner or the means in which you are acquired, though, does affect obviously the expectation.
Sure.
I got no problem with it. You kick the tires on it, you see if there's something there, and if he turns out to be, I was telling JMV yesterday, I remember, and Kevin, you would know better than I because the years to me start to run together, admittedly. I'm going to guess 2017-ish. I remember the Colts midway through the season, their receiving core was banged up, and they go out and they signed Dontrell Inman. And he turned out to be huge for them.
Had that big touchdown in the Tennessee game.
And I mean, there were
the
people that
playoffs.
were like, that guy's terrible. He's cast off everywhere. And
2018 season.
He's a nice player.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what you get here, but you never know, right?
Again, I love kicking the tires on former first-round picks, but Jake, unlike, typically when you see older wide receivers signed, what's the question? Do they still have something in the tank? What hole are they walking up? Are they walking up the 17th hole or the 14th hole? 14th hole, you can still get something out of them. 17th hole, you can't. Andre Johnson was on 17. Some of these guys that are older, Reggie Wayne post-ACL, unfortunately, was at that point. I'm not sure if Breshad Perriman's ever even been on the golf course in his career. So if there is one positive to his resume, he's averaged 16 yards per catch in his career. Anthony Richardson is a big arm thrower. Could you tap into any of that speed? But frankly, I just look at this signing and think he'll be fortunate to make the team. And he better play special teams. So, veteran wideout, support for the young QB. I'm all for it, but this is June scraps. This is a June scrap signing.
A keg of Little Kings is like 32 ounces, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking about a keg size.
Now, Mark,
is the keg coated in the bottle, though? Then that could be a little
Mark,
more
you've never
expensive.
had the Little Kings, right?
No, I was not at Carb Day when you guys had one, so I didn't get one.
Kevin, what was your assessment of
Mark, I will let you know here when Zach arrives. I think potentially today. My assessment was the bottle is an 8.8, the beer is a 3.4.
I mean,
it tasted like a beer that I would have had at my first ever Indy 500.
Okay. By the way, Trayce Jackson-Davis yesterday worked out for the Pacers.
Yeah.
He
was pretty excited about his work.
Here's what I was told. What I was told was he does very well what he does, and he is very strongly improving in the other areas. And late first, early second.
He thought he shot it extremely well yesterday. He was pretty candid afterwards and saying, I didn't shoot it well at the combine. Thought that yesterday was one of his better workouts. We mentioned the Arizona kid. He was going up against Tabellis, who kind of got the best of him in their first matchup.
Yeah, and that was kind of fun for those two guys to work out together.
Tabellis was like, yeah, Trayce made a couple shots right in my face.
Right.
I saw he made the comparison to Sabonis and Draymond Green, kind of as a small ball 5, 4. I think a lot of that's probably kind of agent-driven talk. I understand where he's coming from with that thought process. But, yeah, I mean, late first, early second, in that range. We mentioned it yesterday. Do the Pacers still believe in Isaiah Jackson? Do you still believe in Jalen Smith? If you do, I don't see why you would draft Trayce.
Unless you feel like,
unless you're done with him.
Unless you think you can get the same production that you've gotten out of, say, Jalen Smith, but you do so at a lot less cost.
Yeah, but I don't know the ages. I would guess Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith.
You're probably right.
Jalen Smith is probably older at this point.
But just contractually speaking,
sure.
It would be. By the way, also, best of luck to Michael Bubba Hufford. He is one of the athletes that will be partaking in the Special Olympics in Terre Haute coming up this weekend.
Do we know what sports?
I don't know what sport, actually.
Love it.
Just know that he is participating.
Yeah, I did.
Best of luck to all the athletes of the Special Olympics in Terre Haute this weekend, which unfortunately is the reason why Indiana State will not be hosting their Super Regional in baseball.
Yeah, shout out to athlete Jordan Carson, a friend of mine who participated a few years back in the golf. Absolutely love being a part of that. Speaking of travel, Jake, Trayce Jackson-Davis mentioned yesterday, it actually worked out, he said, really well. He was in Utah on Friday for a workout. Was able to fly here to Indy Friday night, and he was in Indy Saturday and Sunday before yesterday's workout. Now he has 10 workouts in 14 days.
Man.
Boston, where he's off to today. So Brad Stevens action, and then 10 total workouts between now and the draft.
Would you keep the jerseys and shorts from every team?
Oh, sure. Without question. I mean, you show up to your first, bachelor party of your friends, and you're literally the favorite person there. Can you imagine? Yeah, I checked this bag just with my workout gear from the draft.
I have still somewhere, and I don't know where it is, but it did make the cut during the Great Purge.
I thought you were going to say the Great Depression.
I have a Kansas basketball practice jersey somewhere.
Ooh.
It made the cut.
You could probably get some money for that.
It's reversible, too.
Wow.
One side red, one side blue.
I do like when Kansas rocks a little more red in the jersey.
Yeah.
Pacers workout today, number 7 for the draft here. Again, draft 2 weeks from Thursday. It's another group workout, and I would say this is the best group workout they've had yet. The two names of note in this quintet, maybe. Actually, there might be. I think there's 5. GG Jackson from South Carolina. He is he might be the youngest player in the draft. See a lot of people have him kind of late lottery, maybe even pushing into the top 10. And then Noah Clowney from Alabama.
His name's been thrown around a lot.
Yeah, I think in the top 20 range there. Probably a little bit more of a big, maybe a 4, depending on how you look at it. GG Jackson, 6'9", 215, average 15 and 6 for South Carolina last season. Again, extremely young, which we know the obsession with the NBA teams in that when it comes around to the draft. So Cam Whitmore, I think, qualifies still as the best prospect that's worked out for the Pacers so far. But again, today's group, specifically Jackson and Clowney, I'd say the best group.
By the way, Noah Clowney, who is from South Carolina, even though he played at Alabama, right? No relation to Jadeveon Clowney.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I always assumed they were brothers or related, because I think they're from the exact same area in South Carolina, but not related.
Now, GG Jackson, any relation to GG Allen?
See, that's why I was worried that you were. As soon as he said GG Jackson, I thought, is that GG Allen?
Yeah.
Have you and I gone down the GG Allen?
Yeah, we played a song of his on the air one time.
How about Zaire Franklin loving your music intro, Mark?
Yeah.
It's because it wasn't Gigi Allen.
It should have. Maybe it should be.
Did you say you were shocked? Is that what you said?
That I could find a song we could play. Yeah, you bet me we couldn't find one.
Were you familiar with him before I introduced you to him?
Mm-hmm.
Have you downloaded like his entire catalog?
No.
Now? Have you watched the YouTube video of his last show?
Yeah, I think I got put on a list and stuff.
Yes, that is
What
probably
do I think the
true.
GG stands for here for Mr. Jackson?
That's a good question. It's G period, right?
So if he plays here, will Mark Boyle have to
George Gregory.
call him differently? Wikipedia just says Gregory G.G. Jackson II. The dude is 18 and a half years old. Can you imagine being in the NBA?
Kevin, I told you this.
At that age.
There is only, and I know that this is a terrible event to bring up. I don't mean it that way. But I believe there are only 3 players that are thought to be like top 30 picks in this year's draft that would have been alive on 9/11.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of felt that way about Indiana basketball from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, they go after now no prospects that were alive for their last Final Four or their last Elite Eight, however you want to call it, 2002.
Correct, yeah. That's amazing, isn't it?
Is there a Colts player on the roster that's older than me still? I'm trying to think.
Who is the oldest player on their roster?
That's a good question. Mark, will you look that up?
I'm looking right now.
The oldest player on the Colts roster.
How old's Luke Rhodes?
Yeah, Ryan Kelly's got to be close to 30. Rodney McLeod is no longer there. He would definitely have been older. Luke Rhodes, no. I don't think so, at least. Boy, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Gilmore, of course, is gone.
Just wait, guys, until...
Is Ryan Kelly really the oldest?
Just wait until all of these guys have kids in the league, and that's where you're like, holy cow.
High water mark so far, just looking, is Matt Gay at 29 years old. Oh, here we go. Ryan Kelly, 30. Scrolling. Nothing cracking 30. Luke Rhodes is 30.
God, that's wild. Yeah, so easily. I mean, hell, Jake thinks I'm 47, so
Yeah.
it's probably a dumb question.
30
to bring
years
up.
old is the high water mark.
You know, obviously, for all those years, Vinatieri was the outlier, or some old quarterback, certainly.
Unless Liam Anderson, who is his listed age is NA, is 31, then the high water mark is 30.
Rookie from Holy Cross, right?
Yeah. How don't they know his age? Why'd it say NA?
Is that a Danny Almonte situation?
Nobody asked his birthday?
He's AI, so it's NA, right?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Zaire Franklin with some high praise for JoJo Doman, special teamer from last year. I thought that was a good question that you threw his way, Jake, about a young guy that kind of reminds him of himself when he entered the league in 2018. I do think that element of the new kickoff rule, and I loved his answer on it. I couldn't agree more on his answer about the kickoff rule. But I do think that aspect to guys like Zaire Franklin and Ashton Doolin, Jake, they might not have turned into the guys that they are now if that kickoff rule would have been in place when they entered the league.
Right. I mean, he gave really good answers, and he gave very thoughtful answers in all the questions we asked, in particular about whether or not to put ketchup on steak and cheese.
That'll be up on the podcast. Steph Wilson going to join us here in a few to talk about what was a crazy month of May for him in the Indy 500. Unfortunately, the inability to race in the 107th running. So we'll talk with him coming up 9 o'clock hour. Kevin Aquari here. A little bit of a hazy Tuesday, but the sun is out and shining through here in the studio. Good Tuesday morning to you.
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
This is, by the way, from Aaron, a great question. Any chance that Gigi Jackson, the South Carolina basketball player working out for the Pacers, may be related to former MTV original VJ JJ Jackson? Good question. JJ Jackson.
Jaren Jackson go by JJ?
Yeah, because he's Jaren Jackson Jr., right?
Right, the Memphis Grizzlies.
He could go by J Cubed, right? JJ Jackson of MTV fame was the one who hosted on MTV when Kiss appeared for the very first time without makeup.
Oh, I do remember you sharing the story.
It's like a huge deal. And then people were like, holy cow, those guys are ugly.
Put the makeup back on.
We're going to talk with Steph Wilson on the other side of this coming up in the 9 o'clock hour about his pretty remarkable Indy 500 journey. So for those that maybe missed kind of our heavy Isaiah Rodgers chatter to lead off the show, kind of double backing on that, Jake. Again, currently the NFL is investigating Isaiah Rodgers for violating the league's gambling policy. Not to get too deep into what exactly the policy states, but basically it's don't bet on any professional sport at the team facility. Don't bet on NFL games, and certainly don't bet on your own team. Those are kind of the rough rules of it all. The early report is Isaiah Rodgers placed around 100 bets. He had an associate that had the name of the account. Sounded like most of the bets were in the $25 to $50 range. We do not know details on if he bet for or against the Colts, but the first report was he did bet on Colts games.
Kevin, to go back to what I said earlier, I understand, and we talked about this a lot, by the way, which will be on the podcast in the 7 o'clock hour. But I understand that the narrative would be there of it's $25 or $50. I mean, come on. And if he's not betting against his team, but the NFL's aligned with all of the sports apps, that's hypocritical. I understand all of that. I think that athletes, in particular college athletes, it is very, very, very ingrained in them repeatedly about gambling and the necessity for them to separate from it. I also understand and I do think that it's understandable to see why a player would, because of the fact that $25 or $50 in the grand scheme of what players are making, and Isaiah Rodgers is not a guy that was making $8 million a year, but still you're making $1 million a year. $25, $50 is nothing. It's literally the nickel slots in Vegas. And so he probably didn't stop to think about the severity of what it was. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have a CDL license and you are an over-the-road truck driver, a DUI is far more detrimental to your career than a DUI. I mean, they're both terrible. Than a DUI is for somebody who's driving home after dinner and, is an accountant. When you are a professional athlete, the ramification, if that's the right word, for these actions is going to be more severe than it is for just a normal, typical person, because you are repeated. And I realize the alleged or the appearance of hypocrisy and all that. I get all that. The one thing that the NFL, Kevin, oddly enough, and the NBA, not just the NFL, the integrity of the sport is very important to them because they want people who are wagering on their games to know that they are wagering on strictly like luck and chance, quite frankly, and that there is nothing unscrupulous going on to affect the outcome of the game. That is of paramount importance. And so when a player is wagering on or placing bets on his team, it is easy to say from a fan or a media standpoint, well, he didn't bet against them, so he's obviously playing hard. Understood, but if there are 17 games in a season and say he only wagers on them 10 or 11 times, then that all of a sudden sends up flags in the 6 that he's not wagering on the team. What does that say? Does he not think they're going to win? What does he know? And then it becomes essentially, I hate to say this, insider trading. And it's a very slippery slope, and it's a very, at times, foggy slope, but it's a slope nonetheless, and one that I'm sure obviously the Colts and every other franchise would never want to go into. And I also think it's entirely possible that we are seeing the first glimpse of light through a door that may swing wide open in the NFL.
Obviously, the Detroit Lions storyline from a few months ago was pretty big in this. They had a handful of players. Basically, these suspension lengths for those players were indefinite if you bet on NFL games, no matter if it was your team or not, versus in Jameson Williams' case, he did not bet on the NFL, so I think his was 6 games. So that's what Rodgers could be looking at. Again, the report says he bet on Colts games. That would mean a long suspension. I would cut him if I were the Colts, and this report is true. And I know it sounds like a harsh word, but I think it's fair in this case, strictly for the stupidity of it. There are signs all around that building about not gambling. This is a guy that is in year 4 of his NFL career. It's not like he just appeared out of college yesterday. He is in a the most important season of his NFL career is right now because he's scheduled to make over $2 million. That is much more than he's made in any of his first 3 seasons. It's a contract year, and he plays a position that has wide open playing time available and no clear future, indefinite long-term answers. Kenny Moore's in a contract year too. And if Rodgers would cement himself, all of a sudden he's with this team for 3 or 4 more years. He signed a second contract as a 6th-round pick. You have made generational wealth. And for him to squander that for $20 to $50 bets, it is too stupid. It is just flat out too stupid. It's a huge loss for the Colts in that, again, he plays a position group that's wide open. If you're Dallas Flowers this morning, if you're Juju Brents this morning, this is great news, as harsh as that sounds, because playing time, again, is even more open for you because Rodgers had started 9 games for the Colts last season. And I do think, Jake, this is a guy that had showed some signs.
Do you believe his roster spot was in jeopardy? Based on his play as a player, having nothing to do with this, and I do believe, by the way, and I know we're up against it, I do emphatically believe that the Colts were unaware of this. Like, people are going to go back and look at 2 weeks ago and go, well, this move or that move made sense. I don't believe that the Colts had any awareness of this until literally like the last 2 days. I firmly believe that and have been told that the Colts were unaware that this was coming about Isaiah Rodgers.
They haven't made any free agent signings at corner would lend you to think they didn't know this.
That said, do you believe that his roster spot, based on his play, was in any jeopardy?
No, I don't. I thought he was easily one of the best 5 or 6 corners that would have made it. Again, it's a very youthful group. He's the second most experienced guy in that room behind Kenny Moore. So, no, I don't. And I think he would have been one of these guys you would have labeled as a potential breakout. I think when he's gotten play, he's not the ideal Gus Bradley corner from a size standpoint, but when he's been out there, I think he's super instinctual and can make some plays. There are some questions. I see Joel Rex, I see some others asking how he got caught. Certainly, those are details that will potentially emerge down the road. If I'm not mistaken, Jake, I believe there's like a geolocation within these team facilities and stadiums. I don't know if the associate situation had something to do with it, but I think if you place these bets at a specific location that is deemed not allowed, then that indicates, or I don't know, sends a message to one of these gambling apps. They have, partnerships with the NFL. I don't know 100% on that. It's something I should probably look a little bit more into, but it's kind of similar to the Alabama baseball coach in a way, and him, texting one of his buddies about placing a bet on, the starting pitcher's out tonight. FYI, that bet was placed at the Cincinnati Reds arena, or stadium, I should say. There's a sportsbook there. It alerted them of wow, that is a huge bet on an Alabama LSU baseball game, and that flagged something in the system, and they were able to catch that. I know that's not the exact same thing with Rodgers, but it's a little bit into how potentially these people are getting caught. All right, Steph Wilson on the other side.
He is a veteran of not one, not two, not three, but 4 Indianapolis 500-mile races. This year was thought to be his 5th. And then, of course, he was involved in an accident in the final practice that led to, and I hope that my verbiage is correct here, a fractured vertebrae in his back, I believe is correct. He can add more on that. But Stefan Wilson joins us to kind of just update on where things are and perhaps send a message to Indy 500 fans as well, and he's on the hotline. Steph, first off, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jake. Thanks for having me on.
Let's begin with this. The most important question would be, how are you feeling? And take me through kind of the rehabilitation, if you will, and just being back on the mend when it comes to your back.
Yeah, so your verbiage was spot on, actually. So good job with that. But yeah, my recovery's going well. You know, it's a day by day process. You know, it's going to be slow gains every day, and that's all I can really ask for at the minute. You know, every day I just feel a little stronger, a little bit more like myself, and can do actions that I'm more used to doing. You know, so it's going to be about a 3-month process, I'm told. So I'm wearing a back brace and limited to what I can really do for the next 3 months. But, you know, about a week ago, or when I got home, or not home, I should say back to my in-laws where I'm staying in Kokomo until the post-op on Wednesday. So, you know, when I got there, it was, pretty humbling, to realize how much I lost, in terms of not just missing out on the Indy 500, but all the actions that you take for granted, just everyday things, just getting up, moving around. That's all sort of gone at that point. And it's, it was pretty, like I said, pretty humbling. But in the last week, every day just made slow gains, and it's amazing now to look back and see how much progress I've already made. So I'm just hoping for that same kind of progress over the next couple of weeks, months, and to get back to normal. And obviously the goal is to get back to the Indy 500 in 2024.
Okay, Steph, so 3 months till, normal human functions?
Yeah, that's hard to tell at the minute. I mean, I've been up, the first day it was, difficult to even get out of bed, if that makes sense. Just even rolling onto your side, sitting up, standing was a huge challenge for me. And now, just yesterday I was able to get on the treadmill and just walk on the treadmill for 2 miles. So, the progress I've already made has been significant. I don't know, as far as bending down and picking things up and holding weights and that kind of stuff, that's going to be a while. That's probably going to be another 2 months at least. So I think it's 3 months until I'm back to the original strength is what I'm hoping for. But, it's definitely going to be time I'm going to be, relying on my doctors and rehab team to, get full clarity on that.
Steph, was there ever a time initially, and I'm going to gather that probably the combination of shock and then medication, things might be a little hazy, and I understand that, but was there ever concern at the very beginning that the woods may be thicker than just this that you were going through, and that there could be even a paralysis or anything like that?
No, I was never really worried about paralysis. I mean, I'm straight away, immediately in the accident, there was significant pain in my lower back, and I kind of knew that there was probably something not right. But, knowing that the Indy 500 was less than a week away and being a stubborn race car driver like I am, I was like, no, it's going to be fine. So even when we got back to the medical center inside the track, I tried to convince the doctors I was good and fit and healthy and ready to go. So I definitely stood up and walked around with a broken back, which probably not advisable now I look back at it. So there was never sort of a fear of that. It's just, once we had they did the MRI and the X-rays and saw how bad the break was or the fracture was, it was, and that it needed surgery to correct it. That's when sort of a bit of fear hits in, and I was like, man, what's this going to mean for the future? But I actually, all those fears were kind of, again, relieved once I spoke to a couple other drivers that have had a similar type of fracture in their back. And speaking to Terry Trammell as well at IndyCar, he just was able to reassure me that, hey, this is going to suck, but it's you're going to recover from this and get back in a car. So that's all I needed to hear.
I got to thinking about this, Steph. Stefan Wilson is our guest. He's on the Payless Liquors hotline. I got to thinking about this. Like I said, that was going to be your fifth Indianapolis 500. We know that Graham Rahal got in the car for you and ran the race. And I thought, at some point, Stefan Wilson is his own man. He's been in 4 Indy 500s. He's raced in several IndyCar events. He raced in lights. He's forged his own path. He's secured his own sponsors. And at some point, it seems like out of fairness to him, Stefan Wilson needs to be referred to as a driver, and we need to quit simply saying Stefan Wilson, who is Justin Wilson's younger brother. And then I thought to myself, but if I was Justin Wilson's younger brother, I would want everyone to know I'm Justin Wilson's younger brother, because I don't know that there was a more liked and dear and, quite frankly, just honorable driver. And I think everybody in the paddock would say that. But he had terrible luck, and it's almost like you've inherited that same luck.
Tell me about it. I mean, I fully agree with you, Jake. Like, I don't mind being referred to as Justin Wilson's younger brother, because he was an amazing driver, an amazing person. I'm on it. I was lucky to be his younger brother. So I'm racing the Indy 500. I'm trying to win the Indy 500. It's as much about winning it for myself as it is about winning it for him as well, because I feel like that's something that he would have achieved in his career had he had more time. So yeah, but I'm going to need to drop some of this bad luck that I've inherited. So I would definitely like a little bit of luck in the next couple of years would be handy. So you're right. I hope Lady Luck shines on me next year.
Do you have other siblings, or was it just the two of you?
Yeah, it was just me and Justin.
Okay, so with that, Steph, the reality is this. I know you love racing, and I know Justin loved racing, and I assume your parents loved what racing has been able to afford you guys. But at some point, maybe racing's going to have to love you back, but it hasn't happened yet, and racing's taken a lot from you. So why still the desire to race, and is the drive the same as it was the second you strapped into that car for the final practice?
Oh, absolutely. It's probably more now. It's winning the Indy 500 is all I think about. It's kind of an obsession. It's definitely consumed me, and there's not a lot that can really stop me from keeping on, trying to pursue this goal and this trying to achieve this dream of winning the Indy 500. So no, I'm every day I'm working towards that now and trying to get back to that full fitness, and we've got a year to do it. So I'm fortunate that time's on my side at least.
Steph, if you don't mind, could you take us back to that Monday practice and the incident that happened with Catherine Legge? It was obviously a very crowded track, as it is every final Monday practice leading into the 500. What do you remember coming out of, whatever the straightaway, turn one, and hitting the wall?
Yeah, no, it was a kind of a typical pack run. There was we'd been running for about 3 or 4 laps in this group, and it's just kind of typical race running where, people check up and cars check up ahead of you, and you're preemptively predicting that, lifting for it and accommodating the lifts that happen ahead of you, the traffic and checkups that happen ahead of you. So it all felt really standard, really normal. Santino Ferrucci was the car right ahead of me. He was passing Devlin DiFrancesco. So going into turn one, DiFrancesco obviously has to lift to merge in, and there's no way I was going to be able to pass him into one, so I had to lift as well, otherwise I run in the back of him. So, pretty standard stuff. And then halfway through turn 1, I'm already thinking about trying to get the run and trying to get the pass made on DiFrancesco down to turn 3. And all of a sudden, my spotter keys up with a curse word. I won't say it on radio. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but and I was like, that's not good. When your spotter uses that kind of language unexpectedly, you know that it can't be good. And then all of a sudden we got hit from behind. So, just really disappointed that it happened, and disappointed for the whole team, really, because they actually produced an amazing race car. I said it all month. This was the best opportunity I've ever had coming into the 500, and in an instant that was taken away.
Did you hear from Catherine Legg?
Yeah, no, she's reached out and apologized, and it's which I appreciate that. It's just it's still disappointing nonetheless.
And I don't know if you'd say irony or coincidence in it being that her teammate Graham Rahal, then, who had been bounced, that was the big storyline. When Graham became the one to get in your car, Stefan, to me it felt kind of appropriate, because I don't know that people, and you tell me if I'm exaggerating this, but I don't know that people maybe understand the relationship that Graham had with your brother, and then in addition to that, some of the efforts that he made when your brother passed to kind of help and facilitate for your nieces and your sister-in-law. Did that make it, special is maybe the wrong word, but appropriate that it would be Graham Rahal?
Yeah, I mean, he really did help out so much when we lost Justin. So, honestly, all that decision was made and it was all done while I was sort of still out of it, getting ready for the surgery. So, once I came through all that, I was happy to hear that it was Graham. I'd exchanged a message with him the night before on Sunday night after the qualifying and after he got bumped, and was just expressing how, sad I was for him that he missed out, and how much it means to him, and how, he'll be back stronger. And, then it sort of, I didn't realize how quick he was going to be back at that point. So, no, it was good. I've known Graham for so many years, and he obviously, he was going to do a good job for my sponsors and partners that made it all possible. So that was reassuring to know that we had someone in the car that is going to do, fill my shoes pretty easily,
Steph, last one for me. We're 50 some weeks out, so apologies if there's no way to know this for sure. But you said earlier in the interview that your goal is to drive in the 2024 Indianapolis 500. Whether that's your own physical health or it's just an opportunity question, how realistic do you feel like that is sitting here on June 6th?
I'd say pretty realistic. Like the sponsor support that we had this year, all the partners were, had an amazing experience with what we gave them, and a lot of them have already expressed that they want to come back. I think we still have to work some details out with Dreyer and Reinbold. That's the goal, is to come back with Dreyer in the 2024. So, I think there's definitely a few moving pieces, and I'm not going to say it's 100% done, but I think I feel pretty confident right now that we've got some great support, and the job that I did with Dreyer and Reinbold before the accident, they were really happy with. So I think there's a lot of momentum behind our whole program right now, and I would like to say that I feel good about returning, but you never know with these things.
So you go home tomorrow, is that correct? Excuse me, is that correct?
We have a post-op surgery, post-op checkup tomorrow, so probably some x-rays to make sure that the surgery is all doing what it's supposed to have done, and then we head home on Thursday, head back to Colorado. So, excited to get home and really start getting back into, normal day function. You know?
Well, so this is the important thing, and the most important part of you, Steph, joining us this morning. Stefan Wilson, our guest on the Payless Liquors Hotline, and that is the fact that, you know, as you kind of turn the next chapter of this journey, if you will, by assuming that everything goes okay and you head back to Colorado, there are a ton of people, fans of the sport, many of which maybe you've never met, that throughout, from the accident to the start of the race to now, that I think have probably reached out or have simply been pulling for you both inside and outside of the car, and I wanted to give you the platform to be able to speak to them. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, first off, I really want to say big thanks to all the nurses and the doctors that took care of me at IU Methodist Hospital. Everyone was just incredible, even from the IndyCar safety team and the IndyCar doctors were awesome in taking care of me and getting me on the right treatment to start this recovery process. And then, the whole IndyCar fan base just really rallied around me, which, in the days after the accident, I could not believe the amount of support that I received. And, I don't expect anyone to know who I am. I do one race a year, pretty much, the Indy 500. And, I feel very blessed to have that opportunity, but don't expect anyone to know who I am. And the amount of people that reached out and just on social media, and then even in the paddock, signing the banner on the garage wall. So that was super cool to see and definitely helped lift my spirits. And, if anyone else that's going through something similar right now as well, like a back injury, it's like I said, it's pretty humbling at times, but every day it just gets better. So you can definitely send some love out to anyone that's going through it or has gone through it that can relate.
Well, Steph, good luck with the rest of the rehab and the recovery. Certainly safe travels back to Colorado, and I really hope when April or May rolls around next year, we're having this conversation. Hell, maybe we're talking to you on Carb Day, after the race, whatever, about you participating in the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having me on, and catch you soon.
Steph Wilson, right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Jake, goes without saying, rooting interest through the roof for yours truly, and I'm sure yourself as well, in wanting to see Steph Wilson not only taking part in the month of May next year, but ultimately one of those 11 cars of 3 coming up next May.
He was leading the race on lap 195 5 years ago, and I remember he and Jack Harvey both were up towards the front. They'd been cycled up, and they were coming off a caution, and I remember thinking, man, if they get another caution here, who knows what can happen. Of course, it didn't happen. Will Power ended up winning the race, but you heard it there. I mean, just a super nice guy, super friendly guy, and it's amazing to me. I mean, you lose your brother in racing, you hurt your back in racing. It's like these guys are just wired different. And
you just ask why. Why him? Like, why does he get that bad luck? Of all the cars on Monday, crowded racetrack, all the cars, why him? And I'm sure he probably thinks more, well, he obviously thinks from a human element. You just heard that. But, Jake, there is that racer side of him that is obviously very apparent. And he probably watches that 107th running the 500 and thinks, wow, Ryan Hunter-Reay got 11th? That's my teammate. I had a great opportunity. I mean, Hunter-Reay 11th, not like he started in one of the first 3 or 4 rows. He mentioned that he felt like that was the best opportunity he's had so far in his handful of 500s. So, boy, hope we get to next May and Steph Wilson is in there.
There is, and I've mentioned this before, but it's fascinating. It's almost eerie, to be honest. There is a video on YouTube, and I believe it's from the year that Steph Wilson was born, from 1989, and it's a go-karting championship. And I'm going to guess that it must have been like 12 and under was probably the age under. So, like, you have kids younger than that, but the oldest age was, I think 12 was the maximum age of these go-karters. And it's a championship. And it's a guy with his VHS tape that's videotaping it, and he's like commentating as he's walking down the grid. And he's introducing the drivers that are in this literally small English town go-karting championship. And as he's going down the roster, I think Jay Howard is in it. Mark Taylor is in it. Jensen Button is in it. One of the youngest drivers, I believe, in it, and I could be wrong in this. Somebody had told me that in that same series was Lewis Hamilton. I didn't see him in that particular video. But the front row is Justin Wilson and Dan Weldon. And at the end of the video, they're just in some dark little room. It looks literally like a kid's birthday party, and they're giving out the trophies. Dan Weldon wins the season championship. Daniel, as they call him in it. And he goes, Dan Weldon goes up there and looks, he's like he's probably 10 or 11 years old, and he's jumping around. And Justin Wilson, I believe, won that particular race, and Dan Weldon won the championship. And both of those awards are presented. And it is both charming and haunting to watch. But Justin Wilson was, when he was a race car driver, in particular in IndyCar, literally was not only the nicest human being ever, always in a good mood, and I never heard the guy complain once, but yet he was, and any driver will tell you, any of those guys that competed against him will tell you that he was as naturally gifted a driver as anybody in the field. But I don't know if it was sponsorship or whatever else. He just never had a primary ride. And people are like, listen, if that guy had driven for Roger Penske, he'd have won the championship with 2 races to go every season. He was an amazing talent. And I think enjoyed being the underdog. And it just is so sad when Justin was killed. It just, I can't emphasize enough how much it hurt, because he was a guy that you always were waiting for racing to finally pay him back. And for him to pass away was just devastating to people. And so you just want so badly for all of that karma to come back and help Steph Wilson. So, and maybe it did. Maybe the fact that he is going to walk to the airport tomorrow or Thursday and fly home, maybe that's the karma. I don't know, but you root for the guy.
Yeah, it's a movie that's had so many bad turns and twists. You hope there's a great one still coming for Steph Wilson. So safe travels to him back to Colorado, and hopefully we're talking to him next spring in the 108th running of the 500. All right, pop quiz coming up in a few. That is 317-239-1070 for that. Let's begin this morning checkdown with Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final.
The Morning Checkdown. Omaha! On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You heard it on these airwaves last night. A lot of goals for Vegas, a lot of fights for both Vegas and Florida. 7-2 winners. The Las Vegas Golden Knights up 2-0 in the Stanley Cup Final. Most goals ever scored through 2 games of a Stanley Cup Final. That would be 12 goals for Las Vegas. Again, now the series shifting to Florida for Game 3 coming up on Thursday. 148 minutes of penalties last night.
I saw that Brendan King yesterday was at a wedding, which is good, right? That means that he didn't have to watch his beloved.
He was at a wedding on a Monday?
Maybe it was from over the weekend.
I think it's from over the weekend.
Was it over the weekend?
You're having a wedding on a Monday.
I was about to say.
You're inconveniencing.
Do they pay you to have the wedding?
It wasn't pictures from the wedding. It was pictures of like getting ready for a wedding. You know what I mean? Like a rehearsal dinner or whatever. So yeah, it must have been from the weekend. But
you don't get a gift if you're having a wedding on a Monday.
Hell no.
My gift is me being here.
Yeah.
Regardless, I certainly hope that he's doing okay with the devastation of seeing his, you know what I mean?
Series shifting to Fort Lauderdale, hostile environment in there. Brendan King banging on the glass down there. We'll see what happens coming up Game 3.
You always say series doesn't start until home team loses. So
boom. Game 3 of the NBA Finals will be tomorrow night. That is going to be in Miami, of course. Last I saw, Denver a slight favorite as they are coming off their first loss that we've seen here in the postseason in 7 games.
I switched already. You want another one? Can you hear
Major League Baseball? Did you already give the baseball scores?
I did not.
There were only 4. Reds beat the Braves 2-0. The Padres over the Cubs 5-0. It was Tampa over the Red Sox 4-1, and Houston 11-4 over Toronto yesterday. I think that covers everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Indiana State, we know, now on the road to take on TCU in the Super Regional. We'll let you know on dates and times, but we covered a little bit of that earlier, unfortunately. It just seems like, largely out of kind of the Terre Haute, Indiana State control and the inability to host, they will have the Special Olympics, Summer Games, and a massive commitment, very understandably, to that this weekend. So that means Indiana State on the road to take on TCU Typically, those games are either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Again, best of 2 of 3 on that. Indiana's season came to a close last night. They lost 4-2 in Lexington to Kentucky. A pretty intense game. A lot of runners left on base for the Hoosiers, so they bow out in the regional round. All right, it's time for the pop quiz. Give us a call, 317-239-1070. Jiffy Lube Oil Change up for grabs.
.1075 The Fan. Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
I think it's pretty doable.
I think you say that every morning.
No, usually I think I provide nice, honest opinion of the pop quiz. This one, I mean, we've certainly said 1 and 2 throughout the show, which, again, insert your dejection here when you ask the listener, hey, have you been listening today? You know, womp, womp, womp. But I think it is manageable. Scotty, would you agree?
I'd give it a 6.
He says a 6. Jake, your thoughts?
The Colts question is going to trip up some people.
Okay.
Because I will almost guarantee you I know who is going to be incorrectly guessed.
Okay. All right. Give us a number, Jake, 1 through 8.
Last night was game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final, so we will go 2.
Tua is who, Mark?
Steve.
Steve.
What's up?
What's up, Steve?
Just working.
Oh, nice. What are you doing, Steve?
I drive a fuel truck.
Oh, awesome. No, hold on. Now, the fuel truck, does that mean that like you go and you put the gas in the little pumps at the gas stations?
Not that kind of truck. I go to construction sites, fuel up construction equipment.
Okay.
Gosh, I feel like it's a very important piece of equipment that you are driving. Or
what's the longest run that you make, like from point A to point B?
Probably like Noblesville to Plainfield, Avon area.
Okay, so that's not okay.
How much money and gas is in your vehicle on a given run, typically?
I hold about 2,000 gallons.
Holy cow!
Yeah, that's a lot.
Man, stay clear,
now,
Steve.
hold on.
Highway.
You're saying that you're transporting 2,000 gallons, or that's your vehicle runs on 2,000 gallons?
I transport 2,000 gallons a day.
And that's of gasoline or diesel or
off-road diesel.
Wow. Okay.
So what's that usually run a gallon these days, diesel?
I don't know, like $5-6 probably.
Just hauling around,
yeah, $10,000
$12,000 worth of cargo.
Gas.
Right.
Okay. Well, Steve, we appreciate you taking a little break, giving us a call. Jake, you want to throw number 1 out?
Steve, are you native to the area? Are you from Indianapolis?
I live in Broad Ripple.
Did you go to Broad Ripple High School?
No, I went to Pendleton.
Okay, that's cool. All right, here we go. What's your favorite establishment in Broad Ripple? Like, if we were going to meet for a PBR or a Diet Coke, you would go where in Broad Ripple?
Either Average Joe's or Red Room.
No problem there. All right.
Nice. I've had some nights at Red Room.
Here we go. Question number 1 for you, Steve. How many games have the Florida Panthers won in their Stanley Cup Final franchise history? Nada, 1, 2, or 3?
I'm going to say 0.
Okay.
I always think the steps to walk up to Red Room can be a bit dangerous late at night, Steve. I don't know if you've ever felt that.
Red Room is a real swanky place when it first opened.
It's still got a little bit of that vibe, or at least I'm not going to act like I've been inside of it in the last 3 or 4 years. Okay, number 2, Steve. The finals are set at the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City this week. Name the 2 teams that will be playing for the college softball's national championship.
Oklahoma and Florida State.
Oh, my goodness.
How did you know that? Did you listen to the show, or are you betting on college softball?
No, I listened to the show.
All right, question 3, Steve.
I want him to go.
By the way, since you've listened to the show, which of the 2 of us do you think would be more fun to have the PBR with? That would be me, Jake, or Kevin.
He knows to feed the ego where to go.
Yeah, I feel like Jake would be a good one, but Kevin, me and you could talk Notre Dame all day.
Steve, I love it. I love it. I love it. And there would be a back and forth. If you went with the beer with Jake, it'd be a lot of just listening.
I mean, can you blame anybody that would want to do that?
A lot of nodding, a lot of like, where's the exits here? How do I get out of here?
I love
Check,
me some
please.
me, man. You know, the best thing that I have is that every time I go out for a beer by myself, I'm with my best friend. Okay, Gardner Minshew appears to be the Colts starting quarterback for the upcoming season over rookie Anthony Richardson. I have no idea why Scotty is insinuating that, but there we go. Who is the last rookie not named Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck to start a game for the Colts? The last rookie not named Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck to start a regular season game for the Colts. Is it Sam Ehlinger, Curtis Painter, Paul Justin, or Chris Chandler?
I'm going to say Ehlinger. Probably wrong.
Scotty, do you know something there with the Minshew appears to be the starting QB? That's making... Okay, all right. You want another guess, Steve?
What were the choices again?
Sam Ehlinger, Curtis Painter, Paul Justin, or Chris Chandler?
Curtis Painter.
Go ahead, Kev. Since you two are BFF, you guys just go ahead and carry on.
I'm so happy about Sam Hartman here, Steve. We can talk about that offline here. Okay, number 4, Andrew Abbott, Major League debut for the Reds. 1 hit over 6 innings last night as the Reds won 2-0 over the Brewers. Since the pitching mound was moved to its current distance in 1893, dear Lord, only one other Reds pitcher went 6 or more innings while allowing 1 or fewer hits in his debut. She used to have his jersey. Was it A, Homer Bailey, B, Ewell Blackwell, C, Johnny Cueto, or D, Jim Maloney?
Homer Bailey.
Had a t-shirt jersey of this guy. Big old wind-up.
Similar problems to Steph Wilson, right?
What was the third one?
At times. Johnny Cueto was C.
Let's do that one.
Okay, last question. 79 years ago today, the Normandy invasion took place in World War II. What Baseball Hall of Famer participated in the D-Day invasion of France on June 6th of 1944? Gil Hodges, Yogi Berra, Bob Feller, or Warren Spahn?
Yogi Berra.
Nice. Good work there, Steve.
By the way, I just realized, so today is June 6th. How about happy birthday to one Karen Query?
Oh,
my mom.
Just realized today.
Jeez, Jake,
I just realized. Well, my whole family was on vacation. They're all out of town. But my mom's birthday, I didn't realize today's the 6th until just then.
You care to share a number for Karen?
80.
Wow.
My mom's first birthday was D-Day.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Where are they?
Hilton Head.
Nice.
I love Hilton Head.
Nice. All right, Steve. Great effort. What do you get? 4 of them? But Jake, you were all over this. You said
loud and proud.
The one
one
that tripped him up. Curtis Painter is such an obvious guess.
He first went Ehlinger.
I know. Well, that is too, actually. Paul Justin. Paul Justin, who was the starting quarterback when the Colts stunned the Green Bay Packers at the RCA Dome, but I don't think that was in his rookie year. That was later. But Paul Justin started one game in his rookie season of 1995.
What year what round was he drafted?
Was he even a draftee?
I'll look it up.
They started an undrafted dude?
He was a big dude. I think, was it Lindy Infante? It was Infante loved him, I thought.
Wait a minute here. So that was the year that they went to the AFC title game? And Paul Justin started the first game?
No, started 8-1 game.
Oh, got it. I was thinking it was the opener.
Wait.
I think he played at Arizona State. Am I right in that?
I'm seeing Paul Justin was with the Bears in 91.
Yeah, it says he was with the Bears, the Arizona Rattlers, the Frankfurt Galaxy, and then the Colts.
Selected by the Bears in the 7th round of the 91 draft here.
Scotty.
Steve. Steve might need a call back here.
Hold on. He was selected by the Bears in the 7th round of the 91 draft and waived on August 26th. He was cut on August 31st.
I mean, to me, that still defines his rookie year. I think once you put on an NFL jersey and you experience it in practice, if you're not in a game though, this is some shady integrity with the pop. I'm defending my Notre Dame fan and Steve here. Mark.
Well, you two could just go to the Red Room and have a beer and just commiserate about it.
Well, Red Garter afterward.
What? Jeez, Mark.
What?
Let's start at Average Joe's and then go to Red Room after that. Mark, whose side are you on here? That seems a little integrity, very murky there.
That seems like an asterisk at least.
Didn't make the regular season.
Scotty's going to be talking about this in the break for the next 2 years.
Slash our tires.
All right, we'll round it out one final time, Eric, Kevin, and Corey.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
This is going to stun you, I realize, considering that I just 2 hours and 30 minutes into the day realize it's my mom's 80th birthday today. Can I confess to you guys an area that is totally confusing to me, and I need one of the two of you to use your superior intellect to explain it to me?
Oh, boy.
I love the IndyStar. I was an Indianapolis News honor carrier back in the day. I have always found the people's work at the Star to be important here in town. But they are in labor dispute, whatever you want to call it, with Gannett, the parent company that owns the Star. Certainly understand that, and I support them in their efforts. But their means of speaking out is the writers are all keeping their name off the byline of their story. And doesn't that actually support Gannett? Like, in other words, I don't understand the most protests. I understand the symbolism of it.
Right.
But are you basically saying to the parent company, we want you so much to see how important we are that we're willing to actually then just anonymously turn in all of our work, which then allows Gannett to go, see, it doesn't matter who's writing it.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on it as well. Mark, you said Greg Dole was on vacation all week?
Yeah, he's out.
We were going to have Greg on the show yesterday, and I was honestly going to ask him about it, provide a little bit of education behind it. Yeah, it seems like the work is still getting done, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, if you're Gannett, the whole point being that I would think that as an employee, you are saying, I want my employer to value me as an employee.
Yeah, as a name, not a number in an Excel document.
Correct.
Yeah.
So by removing your name, you are in fact showing to them that interchangeably you are all the same.
I was waiting kind of all day yesterday for like someone to release a little bit more detail on why they were taking this particular stance, and I didn't see anything on that front. So yeah, I'll continue looking at that. But good luck. I know that Gannett has slashed so many, particularly like smaller newspapers. Maybe not necessarily. I mean, yes, the Indy Star's had some of it. But some smaller papers around the state, and especially for those local communities, I know it's a huge, huge deal, and I'm very reliant on the Indy Star and enjoy my subscription to the Star, and obviously several of their employees benefit us and our listeners, I hope, from a guest standpoint. Was thinking about some names, Jake, and again, we'll see how the day plays out and how the week plays out with Isaiah Rodgers and the gambling violation that the NFL is looking into, reportedly. For Rodgers. Again, he released a statement late last night, pretty much acknowledging it and apologizing for it. But certainly league-wide punishment, what will happen there? You know, is this an isolated incident? The types of bets he was placing, the suspension length. You know, Juju Brents, the Warren Central product, taken in the second round, he is a guy that would greatly benefit from this. I mean, you probably could have thought he was going to be a day one starter as well. The other name that I keep on mentioning in this rookie draft class that I think has benefited greatly from not only being drafted by the Colts, where the cornerback room is really vacant. He also was able to practice early on in the spring. He wasn't out there on Friday, but he was able to practice early on in the spring and get reps ahead of Juju Brents, who is still recovering from a wrist injury. And now, you know, this Rodgers situation where if these reports are true, he might have just played his last game as a Colt. I think Darius Rush out of South Carolina could majorly benefit from this. Tall, long corner, converted wideout. You know, not a great tackler. That's probably why he fell a little bit to round 5. But had some really nice moments in starting for South Carolina the last 2 years. I think he could be one that maybe isn't a household name on June 6th, but come September 6th, October 6th, he could be playing a pretty big role for you from day one.
There are several guys that are probably going to get a big opportunity here, right? And
do you sign a veteran corner? You know, we saw a veteran wideout sign yesterday in Perriman. We saw a defensive end sign last week. Again, early June, that's when some of these types of moves happen. I'm good with the positions that don't impact Anthony Richardson directly. I'm good with youth, but you'd be going a whole lot of youth at corner.
I mean, and that's, Kevin, my patented line. Somebody actually tweeted this the other day, and I could not have been more proud. Offensive line and defensive backs, cell phones and sunglasses. You can never have too many. Ever have too many. So yes,
Cell phones.
Cell phone chargers.
want
Sorry,
those.
cell phone chargers. Cell phone chargers and sunglasses. You can never have too many, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just constant. You're constantly losing them, breaking them, misplacing them. You're just constantly replacing them, and that's how linemen and corners are. Defensive back to me is fascinating, Kevin, not only because from a health standpoint and just a shelf life standpoint, but I also think it's the most mental position in football.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of ability to move on to the next play.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of guys that it's kind of like a goaltender in hockey. Like a guy gets hot for a while there, right, and just becomes like Kenny Moore's a prime example. He was like a shutdown corner for a while there, and then like what happened?
Rocky Scene, got really grabby, for that month and a half stretch at one point in his career. Maybe even a little bit longer than that. So when you show that on tape, teams are going to pick on you. And obviously the pass-happy nature to the NFL, you see more and more of that. Really enjoyed that conversation with Zaire Franklin earlier. Mark, do you have either of those clips?
Yeah.
Which one do you think is more relevant? Franklin on Rodgers or Franklin on the education of gambling?
Well, let me pull them up real quick.
Okay.
I think the first one, when he was asked about Isaiah Rodgers specifically, I think his answer was, as you would expect. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, maybe let's go with that education one, because I am curious a little bit more on that front, how much these players feel like they've been educated. From the outsider's point of view, while it looks a little awkward, and certainly is, the NFL is in bed with these gambling partners, and there's sports books attached to a couple of NFL stadiums and all of that, I do think the rules and the education is there for players, and they know what is right and what is wrong with that. We asked Zaire Franklin earlier, Colts captain, about that aspect to the league's gambling policy.
Yeah, so, not to really get too much into it, but, this year we had a meeting with compliance, kind of just talking about, the do's and don'ts. I think it was just a lot of gray and maybe a little misunderstanding in some areas, just kind of, what a sports book is. And, I got guys nobody even knows what a sports book is, you know what I mean? So, just kind of clarifying, stuff like that, and just kind of talking through the guidelines of, what we can and can't do as professional athletes and as members of the NFL. So they're doing their best to get the information out. Obviously, the PA is being very active, with our reps coming into the locker room, having those conversations with the entire group and one-on-one combos in the locker room as well. So, like I said, it's a new phase, it's a new element to the game, and with that new element, we gotta be conscious of the new guidelines and the new different things that kind of come along with that.
Kevin, I'm going to go back to what I said repeatedly this morning. Isaiah Rodgers, certainly as an athlete that played Division I athletics and in the NFL, has been repeatedly warned about, told about, advised about the policies when it comes to gambling on the NFL, etc. I also understand, I don't excuse, but I understand why a person in their early to mid-20s who is making, by American standards, a very high percentile level of money would, even with all of those warnings, say to themselves in their mind, yeah, but I make $1.5 million a year and I'm betting $50. That's the nickel slots to most people. That's the penny slots in the airport in Vegas when you get off the plane, right? And you're like, whatever. And so I understand why Isaiah Rodgers would have a difficulty grasping the fact that even in the most minuscule level of things, for him, it is not minuscule to others. And I do think that it is entirely possible that more will come out and we'll find out that this was more than just a $25 or $50 bet here or there. There were apparently hundreds was the number used of bets. When you consider the amount of money that is made in the NFL, when you consider the desensitized nature of gambling in general in the American culture, and you consider that the NFL has sponsored partnerships now with different sports gambling apps, I understand how a player would be naive to thinking through the overall implication of their actions in this regard. But In particular, if he is wagering on Colts games, then it's not about what games he's wagering on or the fact that he's wagering on his team. It's about what happens when he's not wagering on his team and what that implies to people, number one. But number two, again, I'm going to say, it's like if you are a bartender, everybody else in the bar is allowed to drink, and you are the one that's actually providing the beverages to them. But if you get caught drinking while you're on the job, and that's been specifically stated that your owner doesn't want that to happen, there is penalty for that, despite the fact that you are in a culture where it is embraced and accepted by everyone else. Those are harsh realities to learn for a young player, and one that it's very easy for us as the average man to say that they should be aware of, but it's where we are. And I do believe that this is probably something that we're going to find to be more I think we're going to see more this happen with more and more players, to be honest.
Well, we already have. I mean, the Lions had
Correct.
5 players. You know, there's been
Calvin
several
Ridley.
teams. Calvin Ridley last year. Washington, I believe, had a player as well. There are times when you're driving, you don't agree that whatever the speed limit's 35, but if you go 53, you're playing with fire. And clearly, Rodgers knew what he was doing was wrong. If you believe the report, he had an associate's name on the account, so he clearly understood that aspect to it and still decided to do what he did. To me, it's just a level of stupidity that I would go ahead and cut him if I were the Colts. And I'm sure they're just waiting to kind of get all the information, make sure everything they have in order.
I don't know what more information they need, though. He admitted to it last night. You know what I mean?
But I guess just, let the legal matter kind of play out. And I say legal more from they just let everything play out and then make the decision. As is 1 year left on his contract here, scheduled to make a little bit over $2 million, and again was in line, or I should still talk in the present tense, in line for a huge opportunity here in his 4th NFL season. Thank you to Zaire Franklin. Thank you to Steph Wilson. Both of those podcasts will be up. Enjoyed both of those conversations, covered a lot with each of them. Again, shout out to Indiana State. We'll find out exactly when that Super Regional is going to start with TCU coming up later this week, and a big group workout for the Pacers here over at the St. Vincent Center later today. Everybody enjoy this Tuesday. Looks to be another nice day in Indianapolis.